Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Web Audio TV. If you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button.
Chapter 351, The Black Market. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The Black Market was a special place. Yuan and Yuan were even more interested in exploring it, especially since President Nami had mentioned it. Tristana, have you heard of the Red Dragon store? Asked Yuan. I'm not very familiar with it. I don't know much about Kanglan City as a whole. I only came here for the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk because the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had it. I was told to meet you in your territory. Yuan didn't dwell much on it. She'd find out anyway. The carriage traveled fast and reached a wide square. Contrary to popular expectations, the black market wasn't located in some dingy and grim place. It was actually a huge castle that acted as a market. There were many buildings closely arranged near the castle. In the center of the square was a statue of a griffin. Beyond that was the entrance to the castle. Many soldiers guarded the area. From time to time, a Pegasus would swoop above and cast shadows on the ground. The soldiers stood ready to resolve any accidents or fights in the square. At the castle entrance, a huge signboard stood upright with the words, Kanglan City Black Market. Yuan wondered whether a black market could be considered legitimate if it was common knowledge and was maintained by Kanglan City. George had been waiting for them in the square. When he saw their carriage, he walked forward. Lady Tristana, I've arranged for all of you to enter the market without any problem, said George as he helped Tristana out of the carriage. Yuan and Yuan also got out of the carriage. Thank you, George. Please take us in. Of course. This way, please. George led the way. Yuan, and Tristana headed toward the entrance. The guards at the entrance didn't stop them. Many people watched them from afar. Some tried to take that as an opportunity to sneak in but were stopped by the soldiers. Yuan ignored the stares. He passed through the entrance and looked around eagerly. The interior of the castle was turned into a commercial hotspot. Stalls and shops with all sorts of wares were erected on both sides of the main path. Unlike the shops outside, the wares in this market were unique and rare. There were bloody wolf heads and rotting corpses for sale. There were ores with magic, water that could be used for scrying, leaves that flew without even a gust of wind, etc. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. There were all kinds of strange items for sale. Yuan was delighted by everything. He had stayed in the territory for so long that such items astonished him. As they made their way further, they could see shops that sold rare resources and treasures, but the price was ridiculously high. Yuan wanted to take some trinkets home. His wish died when he saw the price tag. The natives had lived in the Overlord Plain for far longer than any hero or lord. They could tell whether the wares were legitimate at a glance. Entering the black market wasn't for the naive of heart. George explained the rules of the black market. Yuan was fascinated by everything. He was quite happy to just look at the strange wares without buying them. Just discovering such rare treasures was enough. Yuan asked George about the location of the Red Dragon store. George led them through a small path toward the shop. They walked a while and finally reached the shop. Yuan and Yuan were surprised. They hadn't expected such a dilapidated place to exist after seeing the other wonders of the black market. Even in such a prosperous place, dirt-ridden shops existed. The store's front glass was covered in dust and stains as though no one had cleaned it in 100 years. As they entered the shop, they saw that the shelves and furniture were on the verge of collapse. Things hung from these shelves and sometimes fell to the floor. It was very messy. Not one soul had ever entertained the idea of sweeping the floor once in a while. On the counter sat an old man with graying hair. One of his eyes was covered by a black patch. He was sitting on a rocking chair that creaked and squeaked. His eyes were narrowed to slits. It wasn't clear whether he had fallen asleep. Yuan opened his attribute panel. Bardus. Level 3. He looked so old and wise that Yuan had assumed he was someone powerful, but he turned out to be a noob. Just level 3. Hello, said Yuan as she stepped forward. I'm very sorry to disturb you. The old man slowly opened his eyes. His right hand flew to his chest as he raised his head to look at Yuan. Who are you? Look around, take whatever you want, pay, and leave. Don't disturb me. Mr. Bardus, President Nami sent me here. The old man perked up when he heard Yuan mention Nami. Nami, that little girl has so much potential. She should go somewhere to broaden her horizon. Why did she send you? How can a lesser lord help me? Yuan narrowed her eyes. I could help you in exchange for your help with something one need. She realized that this old man wasn't as simple as she had thought. He seemed to be very familiar with Nami. You think too highly of yourself. The old man snorted. Mr. Bardus, let me introduce myself. My name is Yuan. Yuan stepped forward. As soon as he finished speaking, a majestic aura radiated from him. The dark energy swept across the world. The small space felt the brunt of it. The old man was trying to go back to sleep when he was startled awake by the aura. He sat up in his chair. A dark demon dragon. Yuan slowly retracted his massive aura. Chapter 352, The Mysterious Old Man. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Lord Yuan is ranked first among the lords, said Tristana. The old man looked surprised. Not bad. Nami does have good taste. She finally found me a good lord. Even if the Lord turned out to be yet another useless trash, the dark demon dragon was indeed someone to be reckoned with. Yuan was stumped. She didn't know what to say. Yuan told the old man about the soul contract she was looking for and what she needed it for. The soul contract can be obtained from the Frost Wolf family. Why do you need me for that? Said the old man. The Frost Wolf family has a soul contact, asked Tristana in surprise. Looks like you aren't the heir of the Frost Wolf family, said Bardus. Anyway, one can help you get the soul contract if you do something for me. Of course. What do you need me to do? Asked Yuan excitedly. One want you to help me find the heart of a god. Bardus looked at Yuan. Yuan was surprised. Does this old crook know what he is talking about? Mr. Bardus, do you have some misunderstanding of the level of our strength? Asked Yuan. Interesting. You feel like you aren't strong enough, but one see no fear of gods within your eyes. Bardus stood up shakily. His one eye focused on Yuan. You don't believe in gods and their power one like that. What are you trying to say? Asked Yuan. One need you to go to a temple and retrieve the heart of a god that is sealed inside. There was a prerequisite for entering the temple. One had to be a non-believer. Mr. Bardus, are you sure I can enter a temple? Yuan was worried. If the heart of a god was sealed in some temple, the danger of exploring such a place would be high. Of course, you can. There are special rules in this place. Only lords can enter the temples. Before you, 20 lords ventured into that temple. Where are they now? Who knows? One didn't see anyone come back. Yuan's eyebrow twitched. This miserable, old scum. Don't worry. There is no significant danger in that place. With your strength, I'm sure you'll be fine. Bardus looked at Yuan. Yuan stared at the old man. This man had sent 20 lords to their deaths without batting an eye. Mr. Bardus, one need to confirm the level of the enemy in that temple, said Yuan. Also, I need the soul contract before I enter that temple. Little girl, are you still daydreaming? Who in this world is stupid enough to give the reward first before the mission is fulfilled? I will only give you the soul contract when one receive the heart of a god in my hands n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Mr. Bardus, you are being really insufferable right now? You want me to enter that temple and deal with dangers there without paying me? How do you expect me to venture in blindly without getting paid when so many lords haven't returned? Yuan glared at the old man. Both people glared at each other, unwilling to back down. Yuan didn't want to go blindly into danger. If she could have the soul contract first, then she could subdue and recruit the vampire duke and take it along to the temple. You foolish little girl, you're the only person who dares to talk back to me. It is no wonder you are different from the other lords. Bardus looked at Yuan in amazement. Yuan was speechless. Mr. Bardus, may I first know why you are looking for the heart of a god? She asked. Bardus smiled and clutched at his chest. It's nothing very important, except I lack a heart. Are you serious? Yuan asked, perplexed. The old man was very mysterious. She couldn't find out much about him. Bardus slowly took off his shirt. He pulled at the skin of his chest to reveal a fist-sized hole in his chest. There was no heart inside. His blood vessels squirmed, and his muscles contracted in rhythm. The old man didn't have a heart? Yuan was stunned. She took a few deep breaths to steady herself. She looked at the old man solemnly. What kind of strength would it take to survive without a heart? It made sense why the store looked old and dilapidated. The old man must have been alive for a long time but had no energy to maintain such a place. Tristana was also shocked. She could sense that the old man was indeed human. He wasn't an undead who could survive long after being beheaded. However, humans couldn't live without a heart. As someone from the Frost Wolf family from the Ice Empire, she had seen so many strange things in her life, but nothing had been as strange as this. Yuan looked at the old man. The old man must be as strong as him. Bardus noticed that all of them looked shocked. He then wore his shirt and hid the hole in his chest. Mr. Bardus, how did this happen? Asked Yuan. Nothing special, said Bardus. One once fought with the red dragon. It managed to tear out my heart before one beheaded it. Yuan recalled the name of the shop. It was called Red Dragon Sushi for a reason. Chapter 353, S-Class Mission. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. An ordinary heart is useless to me. Only the heart of a god with infinite power can heal me. Bardus looked at Yuan meaningfully. He knew that Yuan was a dragon. Yuan, the strongest among the lords, Bardus mused. If you got Nami to recommend you to me, then you're probably not ordinary. Mr. Bardus, you still haven't told me about the kind of danger that lurks in the temple, said Yuan. I have never been inside the temple. How would one know? Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at the old man who acted like an **Ellie. Even if the old man had an extraordinary background, it was difficult to respect and like him as a person. He was so rude. Then how did you know that there was a heart of a god inside the temple? It's an ancient secret. Then I insist you give me the soul contract first before I enter the temple, said Yuan. I told you, little girl. I will only give the soul contract after you obtain God's heart. Bardus was a little annoyed. He saw that Yuan still wanted to argue. Bardus sighed and waved his hand. The space distorted suddenly. The world lost its light. Everything was surrounded by darkness. There was a silver-white weighing scale in front of them with a tray on either side. N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. The world ceased to exist. Only the scale was real. The trays were held in the air by chains. One tray held white feathers and the other was empty. Little girl, a soul contract is nothing. I can give you anything you desire. Yuan was bewildered. She calmed herself and opened the attribute panel. Wishing scale. Level, high-grade divine weapon. Characteristic, after making a wish in your heart, place an item on the other end of the scale. The wishing scale will fulfill your wish. Restriction, the object and the wish should be of equal value. If the wish is higher in value than the object placed on the tray, the wish will not be granted. Cooldown time, 3 months. Note, a divine artifact forged by the god of wishes. Originally, it was intended to be a wishing scale that did not require any payment. Due to some reason, a restriction was added. It still possesses incredible power. Yuan was shocked. He didn't expect the artifact to be this powerful. Bardas looked at their shocked faces. He chuckled. You lords have the ability to see the attributes of anything or anyone. Very enviable trait. You have such a strong artifact, why not exchange something for God's heart directly? Asked Yuan. Child, you still lack so much knowledge. What can you find in this world that might be of equal value as God's heart? I spent half of my life savings to find out information about the location of God's heart. Yuan was hopeful. With an artifact like this, she could definitely obtain something that was powerful enough to subdue and enslave the vampire duke. Although the artifact was very useful, it needed an item of equal value to be placed in the other tray. What level of treasure would be needed to wish for a treasure that could enslave any hero to do my bidding? Thought Yuan. She looked at Bardas. Don't look at me like that. Just tell me if you still want to go ahead with the mission, said Bardas as he glared at her impatiently. Yuan sighed. The old man was powerful but had the temperament of a hooligan. Mr. Bardas, what item will be needed to exchange for a treasure that can enslave ordinary heroes? Asked Yuan. Don't even think about it, said Bardas. Something like that cannot be obtained even with a dark demon dragon helping you, said Bardas angrily. Why are you asking me useless questions? Last time, someone asked me if I could use the scales to get a treasure that would make them divine. If one could do something like that, do you think I would be here talking to you? Bardas was tired of unrealistic expectations. But Mr. Bardas, whether I can get the item or not is my business. You just need to tell me the price I'd have to pay, said Yuan. He would have scoffed, but Yuan's determined gaze convinced him to answer her. It seems that I have underestimated you. Bardas smiled. Such scrolls are of extraordinary power. Even nobles who are of the ancient bloodline cannot afford them. He emphasized that he would help Yuan as long as she brought him God's heart. Yuan heard the notification. Lord Yuan, you have triggered an S-class mission, God's heart. Demigod-level Bardas fought with the ancient red dragon. His heart was ripped out by the beast. He snatched the wishing scale from the red dragon and was able to stay alive. He also learned that he needed God's heart to heal himself. He devised a long plan to obtain the heart. For 10 years, he tried relentlessly to enter the temple where God's heart was located. However, due to special rules, only lords were allowed to enter. Mission requirements: obtain God's heart from the Temple of Blasphemy and hand it over to Bardas to restore his demigod power. Mission reward: Bardas' gratitude and the opportunity to use the wishing scale. Note, the reward for this mission is not fixed. Any action during the mission may affect the final reward. Yuan looked at the notification solemnly. This kind of mission was too dangerous. She read the requirements a few more times. She then turned to Bardas. The mysterious old man with an eye patch was indeed not as simple as he looked. He was at the demigod level. That explained everything. Yuan was surprised that he had managed to snatch away the wishing scale from the red dragon. Chapter 354, Archduke Qingyu. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Dragons were at the top of the food chain in this world. The longer they lived, the more terrifying they became. Dragons were ancient creatures. They weren't feared and revered any less than gods. How strong was this man when he fought a dragon? Yuan wondered. Mr. Bardas, how long do you have? Yuan asked. 3 months at most. If you can't find God's heart by then, one guess I'll be having tea with the god of death. Bardas grinned. There was no fear or anxiety in his voice. He seemed as relaxed as ever. Yuan was conflicted. The mission was complex, and the reward was tempting. However, the dangers. Perhaps if Yuan came along, she might still have a chance. Mr. Bardas, I always treasure my friends, said Yuan. And President Nami specifically mentioned you. She is a friend to me. 1. Accept this mission. Within 3 months, God's heart will be in your hands n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Although the mission was difficult, the reward was remarkable. She couldn't miss the chance to obtain the soul contract. Bardas nodded. I like your confidence. He took out a thumb-sized compass from his pocket. Here. He passed it to Yuan. You need to prick your finger and drop your blood on this. It'll guide you inside the temple. Yuan accepted the compass. A notification appeared. S-class mission accepted. Please complete the mission within 3 months. The mission will expire automatically after 3 months. Yuan took a deep breath and looked at Bardas. She needed to do this. If she could get the soul contract, nobody would dare touch her territory with the vampire duke around. Yuan was glad for the chance. The trip to Kanglan City was worth it. She asked Bardas for more details of the mission. She even asked him about the Dimension Stone and World Tree Seed. Bardas had the answer to everything. Even if he was only at level 3 right now, he had once been a demigod. He had adventured far and wide. After that, Yuan, and Tristana left the store. Bardas watched them leave. He leaned back on his rocking chair. It seemed he had aged another 10 years at that moment. A cloaked figure appeared behind him. Lord Bardas, this lord is not as simple as she seems. The dark demon dragon, it's highly likely that he knows about my existence. The blue eyes under the black cloak stared at Bardas. Bardas didn't respond. His eyes were closed. He was conflicted. Could this lord finally bring God's heart to him? We've waited too long for this, Lord Bardas. All of us, we're waiting for you to rise again and lead us. After leaving the Red Dragon store, Yuan strolled through the market listlessly. Yuan turned to look at Tristana beside her. Tristana, did you ever hear about Bardas and his ailment before this? A demigod who could survive without a heart sounded like an existence from myths and legends. Moreover, Bardas had a divine artifact. If he hadn't lost his power, he would probably be a ruler of some empire. The world is huge. There are numerous others like Mr. Bardas. Yuan was silent. The natives had existed for so long that they were more powerful than the new and upcoming lords. Yuan felt lucky that she had Yuan. She had advanced so quickly because of him. Yuan finally understood why Yuan always pressured her to become stronger. What do you think of Bardas? Yuan asked Tristana. When he was at his peak, he must have been unimaginably powerful. Tristana looked wistful. If she had the power to kill an ancient dragon, no one would dare stand in her way. Lord Yuan, the danger in that temple might be beyond your imagination, said Tristana. Please reconsider this mission. You are still growing as a lord, and your territory has so much potential. There is no need to take unnecessary risks. With the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk, I'll implement my plan soon. After 1 take control of my family, 111 have more freedom. 111 do everything to get you a soul contract. Yuan was moved. She respected and admired Tristana even more than before. Don't worry. I'll heed your concerns. I'll prepare wholeheartedly for the mission. Without absolute confidence, I won't venture into the temple at all. Tristana nodded. She knew that Yuan wasn't an impulsive person, so she wouldn't rush into danger without appropriate preparations. Tristana, where can I buy high-level armor? Asked Yuan. Archduke Qingyu's shop has some powerful armor. Archduke Qingyu. Tristana nodded. The paragon of Qingyu and a legendary ascetic. Archduke Qingyu was only 1 step away from becoming a demigod. The fact that an ascetic could become a legend was admirable. Ascetics seems like a very rare profession. This was the first time Yuan had heard of such a profession. Chapter 355, The Fact About Ascetics. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Tristana was surprised that Yuan and Yuan hadn't heard about ascetics. Ascetics aren't very rare, but they are an advanced class of warriors. You can choose them after level 10. However, very few warriors chose to be ascetics because it was very difficult to level up as an ascetic. Ascetics couldn't wear defensive armor or carry weapons. They could only engage in hand-to-hand combat. Ascetics had to increase the strength of their bodies to be able to level up. It was common for ascetics to venture into dangerous terrains to train themselves. That kind of suffering was not something that ordinary people could bear. With such hard work, most ascetics developed a body that was as strong as a dragon's. They were so strong that they could fight several heroes of the same level single-handedly. As for the legendary ascetics, they were immensely powerful. Archduke Qingyu probably could resist the dragon's breath and walk into lava all naked. My father used to say that ascetics might be one of the strongest people to exist, said Tristana. Yuan was deep in thought. She needed to be careful if she ever encountered ascetics in the future. People who trained in such brutal conditions wouldn't be weak. Yuan couldn't ever imagine fighting enemies barehanded. Then, let's go visit Archduke Qingyu. I want to see what a legendary ascetic looks like, said Yuan. Archduke Qingyu's daughter usually handles the transactions. Her Highness, Baiyan, is in charge of the trade. We might not get to meet Archduke Qingyu, said Tristana. George led them through the narrow path. A group of people were gathered in front of a shop that was huge. It could accommodate thousands of people. On the huge plaque in front of them, the words Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce flashed on a board. Dozens of statues of flying horses were embossed on the outer walls. At the entrance, there were 2 rows of 10-meter-tall magic stone statues holding long axes to guard the sides. They were all top-tier troops. People entered and left the structure. The place seemed bustling with activity. George led them through the entrance. The ceiling of the place was dome-shaped. It was carved with complicated patterns. Huge oil paintings hung on the walls. A staff member approached them. Dear guests, the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce welcomes you. I'm at your service. What exactly are you looking for? I'm looking for some high-quality armor, said Yuan. What class? S-class armors. All equipment and treasures of that level are on the 2nd floor. Please follow me, said the middle-aged staff member with a wide smile. Yuan followed him along with the others. They passed through the crowd and arrived at the stairs. Before they could make their way up, they heard some commotion. A few lords stood in front of an old man with a goatee, looking very frustrated. On the counter were some damaged items. It was obvious that the lords had returned from the wilderness to sell their treasures. There was a rusty sword, a broken shield, and a broken longbow. The things carried a musty aura. They seemed to be corroded by time. They were probably picked up from some ancient ruin. Sometimes there are lords who don't know the origin and the level of the treasure they bring along. Occasionally, they get into disputes, said the middle-aged man who had led them to the stairs. The group paid no attention and started up the stairs. This is legendary equipment. Even if it's damaged, it should be worth something. What you're giving me is so little. The argument became more intense. Sir, I'm being honest. What one showed you is what it's worth. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce hasn't ever lied to anyone. You're lying? Last time, you offered 3 times the current price. One of the lords turned and saw the middle-aged man. He pointed at the stairs. We sold it to him last week? Call him over. The old man with a goatee behind the counter turned to look at the middle-aged man who was leading Yuan and her group up the stairs. The man looked embarrassed. He would suggest moving the treasure acquisition area to the back later. The commotion had drawn many people. The middle-aged man couldn't just ignore the lord and leave. He smiled and apologized to Yuan and her group. Please give me a moment. He called a staff member and assigned him the task of accompanying the customers to the designated floor. He then turned and walked down the stairs. Yuan was intrigued. He wasn't in a hurry to go up. He walked down the stairs and got closer to the crown. Yuan and the rest followed him. I sold similar treasures last time. Why is the price lower than half this time? The lord held a rusty sword and glared at the middle-aged man and the man with the goatee. When the middle-aged man saw Yuan and the group approach the crowd, he looked indignant. N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. Sir, listen to me. We took the items that you sold to the blacksmith for repair. The blacksmith said the items were beyond repair. It wasn't worth it. If we cannot repair the weapons you sell to us, then they'll all go to waste. How do I know if you're telling the truth? You might be lying too. That's fair. If you don't believe me, you can try selling the treasures at another shop and see how much it fetches you. Yuan looked interested. There was something strange about the whole thing. If the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had offered them a high price last time but were offering half of that this time, something must have happened. Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce claimed that the price of repair exceeded the price of the treasure itself, so it was not worth buying similar treasures. Chapter 356, Withered Branch. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan was curious about the treasure that the lords had brought with them. He activated the True Eye of the Demon Dragon. Bronze Battle Blade. Level, none. Status, heavily damaged. Note, it was once a legendary weapon. Under the erosion of time, it has lost its power. The result was the same for the damaged black sword, the broken longbow, etc. There were a total of 20 weapons on the counter. None of them could be used. However, most of them were indeed legendary items. Yuan wondered how the lords had obtained such high-quality junk. When the man with the goatee heard that the weapons were beyond repair, he didn't even want to offer half the price. He chased the lords away. The lords were very angry. They cursed at the staff, produced a black bag, and proceeded to put their weapons back into the bag. Yuan was amused. He turned around and left. One of the lords was putting a longsword in the bag when it fell to the floor. It broke with a crisp sound. Yuan turned back to look. Yuan didn't think much of it and just found the situation funny until one of the lords took out a withered branch and swept the remaining weapons from the counter into his bag. Yuan's heart pounded as he stared at the withered tree branch in the lord's hand. He felt a strange familiarity. The withered branch had a dark aura to it. Yuan was curious. Where did the lord get the branch? The withered branch wasn't old and derelict like the other weapons? If Yuan hadn't established frequent contact with the dark withered tree, he wouldn't have recognized the aura of the branch. For outsiders, the tree and the branch might be just trash which was contaminated with dark energy, but it was different for Yuan. Yuan wanted to follow the lord, but he noticed that the crowd was watching the group of lords closely. He didn't want to attract too much attention. He watched as the angry lords picked up their wares and prepared to leave. He leaned toward Tristana. Tristana, please stop those lords from leaving, whispered Yuan. They have something I need. Tristana blushed when she sensed Yuan leaning so close to her. Yuan was a bit jealous, but she knew Yuan wouldn't do something like that if it wasn't completely necessary. Tristana nodded. She turned to George and instructed him to go after the lords. He chased after them. George talked to them. The lords bowed and left in high spirits. Lady Tristana, I asked them to wait at the entrance of the black market, said George, reappearing at their sides. I also told them that if they don't see us at the entrance by night, they can find us at the Lavender Manor. The lords valued profit. If someone showed an interest in buying those useless weapons, they wouldn't let the chance slip by. Other shops wouldn't want their wares because of the condition they were in. So, they would wait for them to sell their wares, no matter what. Yuan looked at George in admiration. George knew how the lords functioned. Yuan was deep in thought. A branch which held even darker energy than the dark withered tree, where had it come from? The middle-aged man found them again and apologized profusely. Yuan told him it was all right and followed him to the second floor. It was better to check out the armors first and then meet the lords. They all made their way to the second floor. There were fewer people on that floor. The way in which these people were dressed was clear to show that they were rich and probably belonged to noble families. The middle-aged man led the group to an open pantry in the hall. They sat down at the table and were served tea. The middle-aged man whispered to another staff member. The staff returned with catalogs. These are the armors that we haven't sold yet. They are all S-class. Yuan and Yuan took a catalog each and opened them. The armor's pictures, attributes, and characteristics were all recorded in the catalog. There were more than 50 types of armor in the catalog. The attributes for each were all outstanding. Yuan didn't find any of them to be worth his interest, so he handed his catalog to Yuan and let her choose what she liked. N/O/vel/b/in.c//om. Yuan found something she liked. Bloodthirsty armor. Level, S-class. Characteristic, bloodthirsty. Every time you kill an enemy, you can turn their blood into energy to recover your strength. You can also control the blood energy to repair your armor. Abilities. Boiling blood chi, able to cast powerful blood chi on the armor, increasing its defense by 500%. Duration, 20 minutes. Cooldown time, 1 day. Fight bravely, immediately remove all control skills and magic on your body. Cooldown time 30 minutes. Note, the masterpiece of a forge master of the Beast clan. Possesses powerful defense and brute strength. Yuan liked the armor. How much is the bloodthirsty armor? The bloodthirsty armor is currently priced at 2 million rare resources. 2 million rare resources. This was the first time Yuan had heard of such exorbitant prices. Even if the whole territory went without food and enmities for a whole year, they might not be able to save that much. The middle-aged man noticed her surprise. The armors have significantly higher and better attributes than weapons and shields, so they are priced higher, he said hurriedly. The attributes on this armor have been tested in actual combat. It is a little pricey, but the armor is definitely worth it. Alternatively, you can also use treasure of the same level to exchange for it. If the value of the treasure is not enough, you can always top up with something else. Yuan nodded. She suddenly remembered that she had something of remarkable value. She took out a special treasure from the system space. Broken lake. Characteristic, can summon a lake that will never dry up and float in the sky. Note, a treasure with magical power. She had obtained the treasure a while ago. Perhaps it could be used to exchange for the armor. Chapter 357, Tristane's Shock. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The magnificent treasure was immensely valuable. Yuan hadn't used it yet. Nov, L, B /JNN. How many rare resources can I get for this thing? Yuan placed the treasure on the table. If this treasure is really like you describe, it'll be worth millions of rare resources, said the middle-aged man. Yuan was surprised. It can sell for millions. The great nobles would be interested in this. No one would mind having their own swimming pool in the sky. The lords living by the lake might also want it. It's even good to use as a war fortress. Yuan thought about it. A lake in the sky provided an advantage in battle. The price seems fair for such a treasure, said Tristana as Yuan turned to look at her. Even if this treasure was worth millions, she felt that it was still somewhat lacking. She only had around 200,000 rare resources in her inventory. Fortunately, Yuan had another treasure. It was a legendary treasure, a victory gem. This gemstone had come from the rainbow treasure chest. The victory gem had 2 abilities. The person who held the gem could inspire and motivate their subordinates. Even when the situation is dire and defeat is imminent, the troops would follow the person with unwavering loyalty. The second ability was that the gem made the bearer immune to any and all magic that could shake or lower the morale of the troops. This was especially effective while fighting evil heroes. Note, Goddess of Victory bestows this treasure as a reward to her loyal followers. If this gem is embedded in any equipment or armor, the Goddess of Victory would bless it. The only disadvantage was that Yuan's territory couldn't use it. Legendary treasures were worth at least 18 million. The rich and imposing Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce seemed to be a good place to sell such a treasure. When Yuan took out the gem, Tristana's face changed. She looked flustered. Victory. Lord Yuan, you don't need to sell this here? Maybe you can examine it more before selling it. There is no hurry to sell it, after all. Tristana looked at the gem with an unconcealed hunger. All right then. I'll have to trouble you later to find out more about the treasure, said Yuan as she put back the gem in the system space. Tristana heaved a sigh of relief. The middle-aged man didn't know what the gem was. He looked confused. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was very renowned in Kanglan City, especially because the one who owned it was someone powerful. An appraiser examined the fragment of the broken lake. The two sides reached an agreement. Yuan bought the bloodthirsty armor. Yuan was sure that she would get enough resources with Tristana buying the gem. Yuan was a little emotional. She had found a good friend in Tristana and had sold her treasure for a lot. This was a sign that she needed to establish frequent contact with the outside world. The armor was given to Yuan. The armor adjusted to the body of the wearer. It made Yuan look very regal. Yuan noticed Yuan looking at her, and she blushed. Yuan was wondering about how the armor would impact future enemies. After that, they all left the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Lord Yuan, is that the victory gem that you were going to sell? Asked Tristana after they were out of earshot. Yuan nodded. Yes. I obtained it from a chest during one of my expeditions. The attributes are decent, but why did you look so surprised before? Yuan was puzzled by Tristana's reaction. The eldest daughter of Grand Duke Frostwolf wasn't someone who hadn't seen the world. Lord Yuan, that is a victory gem, said Tristana. So, the victory gem can summon the goddess of victory, said Tristana excitedly. When the gem is embedded anywhere, it'll carry the blessing of the goddess herself. Summon the goddess of victory. Is this gem so powerful that it can summon a real goddess? When I was very young, I saw it being used once, said Tristana. The goddess of victory descended from heaven among the hymns. I can never forget that moment. I thought I would never get to see such a treasure in my life. I didn't expect to see the gem in your hands. Tristana looked at Yuan. You know, I've met numerous lords, but none of them seemed anything special. But you, maybe you're favored by the gods. Yuan was stumped. She didn't know what to say. The fear and reverence for the gods were deeply rooted in the hearts of most people. Yuan didn't know what to do with the way Tristana looked at her in admiration, just because she thought Yuan was blessed by the gods. All that aside, summoning a god was beyond anyone's imagination. Yuan didn't even think that it was possible. If anyone could summon a god or a goddess, they would be considered immeasurably powerful in this world. Chapter 358, Who is the Lord? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. How do I summon the goddess of victory? You will have to let a red-robed archbishop of the Victory Temple activate the imprint inside the gem. They should be of legendary level. When that's done, the goddess will sense it and descend from the heavens. Yuan's eyebrows twitched. A legendary archbishop. It was nearly impossible to meet such people because they usually occupied positions of power and wouldn't meet ordinary people. This blessing of the goddess of victory. Does it strengthen the attributes of any equipment or weapon? Tristana nodded. Yes. The blessing might even grant extremely powerful abilities. Most of the abilities were for the light types. In fact, the victory gem was a reward for believers who showed unwavering devotion while resisting the invasion of the abyss. Not many gems are left. Perhaps there are only 100 or so around the world. But, the goddess favored the light types. She hates the dark types. Yuan realized that her hero and her territory were mostly dark. She understood what Tristana was saying. Yuan couldn't use the gem in her territory. However, Yuan was determined to find a use for the gem. So, how much would it sell for? Asked Yuan. If she couldn't use it, she might as well sell it for a good price. Are you still planning to sell it? Tristana was stunned. The victory gem does sound promising, but one don't think it's suitable for me and my troops. Most of my troops are dark types. I might as well exchange it for a decent number of resources. Yuan didn't have a use for the gem if she couldn't harness its power. If she sold it for a large number of resources, she could at least develop and strengthen her territory. For a lord, her territory was everything. Tristana sighed when she saw how indifferent Yuan looked. It was no wonder Yuan advanced so quickly. She held no unnecessary attachment to things and did what she had to. Such decisiveness among the lords was rare. If it was her, she would have kept the treasure even if she couldn't use it. She would pass it down to the future generations as a family heirloom. Lord Yuan, if you really intend to sell it, I'll buy it from you, said Tristana. For me, this treasure is invaluable. I want to enhance it so that I can use it. Before Yuan could even respond, Yuan grabbed the gem and placed it in Tristana's hands. Tristana looked at him in shock. Lord Yuan, what are you doing? You said you need it, said Yuan. He shrugged. Tristana looked at Yuan. Lord Yuan, and I haven't discussed the price for the gem yet. If you find something good in the future, send it our way in exchange for this. We can decide fast for such a small matter. We're friends, after all. I trust you, said Yuan. Although he and Yuan hadn't known Tristana for long, they were sure that she was a good person who kept her word. She had been nothing but helpful till now. Her morality had impressed him. Yuan was helpless. Usually, she was the decision-maker because Yuan didn't care about anything half the time. However, if he felt this strongly about the matter, then she wasn't going to refuse. Moreover, Yuan was also grateful to Tristana for helping her all this time. She felt that Tristana wasn't a person who would betray her. If she could support this future Grand Duke Frostwolf, it would definitely be beneficial. Tristana accepted the gem in trembling hands. She could feel the immense power within it. She felt very emotional. Lord Yuan, now I am sure that my encounter with you was written in my destiny. Meeting you has been the greatest thing. I'll definitely repay you for the faith you've put in me. Yuan smiled. She was glad that all her friends were doing very well. Shi Linglong, Zhao Qingrong, and Lin Yao were in the top 4 among the lords. Tristana had become a dear friend, and everything was working out for her so far. She was glad to see it. Yuan also felt that her business was going well. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had increased the price for the 100 Nightflower honey, which massively helped with her profits. Moreover, she was trading the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk with Tristana for a decent price. Everything was working out perfectly. Yuan was itching to leave this place and get the withered branch. Tristana wanted to head back and examine the gem closely. They all headed to the entrance of the black market. The lords saw them approach. Sir, we're here. Shall we, Lady Tristana? Asked George. Tristana George led them to the lords. Tristana looked at Yuan. Meeting in such an open space was bound to be risky if what the lords provided was of any value. Maybe we can meet them at the manor. George nodded. He discussed with the lords to meet at Lavender Manor. They didn't have any objections. A different carriage was arranged for them. Suan and the group got into the carriage with the Frost Wolf emblem and headed to the Lavender Manor. In the carriage, the lords talked in low voices. Who do you think the lord is? Even the nobles are so respectful to her. She must be someone of higher rank. Perhaps she is among the top 100. That's B** shit. Do you think someone in the top 2 would be this easy to meet? Maybe the lord is completing a mission for the noble lady. That's possible. Nov. L. B / JNN. Our hard work wasn't in vain, though. This pile of junk might be finally worth something. It's a pity the ruins were destroyed, and we couldn't get anything more. Chapter 359, The Collapsed Ruins. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Tristana had no interest in the lords and their junk. She left Su Yuan, Suan, and the other lords in the main hall and went to her room. She wanted to find Claude to study the victory gem in detail. The lords watched as Tristana left and then turned to Suan, who was sitting at the head of the long table. The lords were confused. Lavender Manor wasn't an ordinary manor. The guards were all level 50 soldiers. There were even some heroes who were at level 59. They were even more puzzled when the noblewoman left. They wondered if this overlord and her handsome hero owned the manor. Nov. L. B / JNN. The servants and the maids stood in a corner in attention. The lords were baffled. They hadn't even been offered a seat at the table. My name is Mo Licking. I'm here to sell some top-notch treasures. Are you in charge here? The leader calmed himself and stepped forward. Suan watched him with interest. Then, the rest of you must be named Mo Lishao, Mo Lihe, or Mo Lihong. The lords nodded. Suan couldn't help but laugh. To answer your question, yes, I am in charge of this manor. Can you show me your treasures? Mo Lishao hesitated. Their treasures could fool others, but a lord could easily open the attribute panel for the treasures and find out that they were all junk. He cleared his throat. We aren't different from each other. We're all lords. It took us so much effort to find these treasures, said the lord. We could give you a 10% discount for this. Don't worry. If the treasures are decent, I will pay you well, said Suan. They were indeed smart. However, you'll need to give me every detail about the items and their origins. Just tell me what kind of creatures you met, where the items were originally located, etc. The ruins had already collapsed, so the lords didn't think that would be a problem. It wasn't like Suan could go and check the ruins personally. No problem. As long as you pay us a decent price, all the information is yours. Then, take them out and show me. The oldest lord, Mo Lishao, opened the sack and placed the badly damaged treasures on the table. It was a pile of junk. In front of the others, the lords could pretend that these treasures were valuable. With another lord, they didn't bother to pretend. Su Yuan perked up when he saw the withered branch at the bottom of the pile. He could sense the dark aura. He was right. The aura was similar to that of the dark withered tree. This branch seemed to be even more dark and evil than the tree. He looked at Suan and nodded. Suan pretended to be indifferent in front of the lords. She picked up 1 or 2 weapons and pretended to examine them. Then, she lifted the withered branch from the bottom. This branch is stained with the aura of the undead. Where did you get it? She asked. It's not stained with the aura. It's the branch's aura, said Mo Lishao. What do you mean? The origin of this branch is extraordinary. It's something we broke off from a withered tree. Seeing that Suan was interested, Mo Lishao became a persuasive salesman. That tree is different from ordinary trees. It grows from flesh and blood. Seeing Suan so lost for words, Mo Lishao chuckled. This is the first time we've seen such a strange tree. Unfortunately, the tree had withered away before we found it. Only this branch was intact. If we'd found it a while before, we'd be rich by now. Su Yuan was interested. Is it possible for that tree to replicate the dark withered tree? What's that tree called? Suan asked. Dark demonic tree. According to the system's information, that thing was an evil tree that grew from corpses. It could also bear blood fruits. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything more, said Mo Lishao. Where is it located? Asked Suan. Mo Lishao opened the system map and shared the location with her. There was a mythical ruin in that place, but it collapsed a long time ago. We explored it for 2 months but didn't find anything good. Mo Lishao sounded disappointed. It wasn't easy to find a mythical ruin. They had expected to find decent treasures but got nothing out of it. Suan opened the map and looked closely. There were conspicuously marked points on it. It was about 500 kilometers from Kanglan City and was in the desert. Su Yuan and Suan decided to check the place out to see what exactly was wrong with the dark demonic tree. If the dark demonic tree was considered so powerful, it shouldn't be withering away so easily. Withered branch. Characteristic, gives off a dark aura. Note, a broken branch from a unique tree. The tree looked very ordinary. If the lords hadn't opened its attribute panel to check, they would have passed by it without giving it a thought. Suan activated the true eye of the demon dragon to find out more about the tree. The withered branch of the dark demon tree had a weak vitality. However, it could regain its vitality if it consumed mana. This branch is still alive. Suan was stunned. If the branch was still alive after being separated from its tree, was the dark demonic tree really dead? Suan was intrigued. She didn't mind planting a dark demonic tree in her territory. Suan continued to inquire about the ruins. Mo Lishao was still hopeful that Suan would buy their junk at a high price, so he told her everything about the ruins. There was nothing good inside anyway. He had searched the whole place for 2 months. Chapter 360, Mutual Benefits. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan asked for a lot of details about the ruins. The dark demonic tree was apparently located in an inconspicuous corner of the ruins. Now that the ruins had collapsed, more than half the area was buried under sand and rubble. The only dangerous place in the ruins was the tomb in the center. It was supposed to be guarded by some terrifying creature. They were all above level 65, and there were at least 100 of them. The lords had even seen a level 69 leader. However, there were no treasures inside. The lords had used special methods to explore the whole area. Yuan and Yuan made up their minds. The ruin was an important place, and there was probably a nightmare-level creature hiding inside. With their current strength, they had a chance of winning the fight against such creatures. Yuan guessed that the ruin was not as simple as the lords made it out to be. There was definitely something in the center. If they made their way there and came back with the dark demonic tree, it would still be worth it. It might be a dead tree to others, but it was different for him. Yuan chose 10 weapons and paid 5% more than what the other Chamber of Commerce might have paid them. She had the information she needed and didn't mind returning the favor. It cost her a total of 1 million units of resources. The value of the information she had obtained was far beyond what these resources could compare to. The lords were ecstatic. For lords who had lost their territories, it was difficult to make an income. Yuan informed the lords that she was looking for a soul contract, and if they could find any information on it, she would reward them handsomely. When the lords heard that she was willing to reward them with A-class treasures, they were excited. They patted their chests and told Yuan that they would definitely get the information she needed. After they left, Yuan transferred the weapons into the system space. She left the branch on the table to study it more. When Tristana came down to the main hall, she saw Yuan looking at the branch in her hands. "Lord Yuan, what are you doing?" "I found something interesting," said Yuan. "How's the research on the victory gem coming along?" Yuan put away the branch. "The victory gem is too complicated. We can only vaguely sense the special imprint contained within it," said Claude. "We'll need to ask Grand Duke Frostwolf about it." "The Grand Duke Frostwolf is a believer?" asked Yuan in surprise. Grand Duke Frostwolf and a believer of the goddess are the closest of friends. "The believer is also at the legendary level," said Claude. Yuan felt uneasy. All the powerful people lived such simple lives. "Lord Yuan and Lord Yuan, please come with me to the Frostwolf territory. I'll find a treasure that can be of use to you," said Tristana. "Perhaps another time. I do want to visit the Ice Empire. I especially want to see the Frost Ore," said Yuan. Yuan also wanted to visit the Vampire Castle to find out more about the Vampire Duke. The Beastman had snatched the blood coffin of the Vampire Duke from the Vampire Castle. After all, Lord Yuan visited the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce personally. "Why are you asking me about her? Didn't you meet her?" said President Nami. "What? When? I didn't even know about it." "This morning. She went to the black market and then visited the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce to buy some armor. The staff showed her around," said Zoro. "I didn't go to the black market today. Shouldn't you be accompanying Yuan to Kanglin City?" Baiyan asked. "Lady Tristana brought Lord Yuan to Kanglin City, so she's showing her around," said Zoro. "Tristana is here. Why didn't she meet me? I thought Tristana just went to meet Yuan to buy the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk. Are they close now?" Baiyan frowned. "Lord Yuan is extraordinary. Lady Tristana is giving away Lavender Manor to Lord Yuan as a gift," said President Nami as he lifted her cup of tea to her lips. "That's impossible. Why would Tristana give away her manor to some lord?" asked Baiyan in disbelief. "That was what Lady Tristana said when we met her this morning," said Zoro. He was also puzzled by that. Zoro didn't think Tristana and Yuan had known each other long enough to reach that state of goodwill. He was confused why Lady Tristana had done something like that. Baiyan was impatient. She got up and walked out. "I have to find Tristana. That lord must have tricked her." "Your Highness, that's not necessary." Before they could stop her, Baiyan had already walked away. "President Nami, do you want me to go and make sure that everything is all right?" asked Zoro. "No need. It's just a small matter." Nami was deep in thought. "Have the people from the Red Dragon store returned?" "Nov. L.B//JNN. Not yet. I don't know if teacher will approve of Yuan," said President Nami. "We don't have much time left." Zoro was silent. Chapter 361, Yuan is worthy of attention. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The room fell silent. There was some commotion outside. "Teacher." Nami's eyes lit up when she heard the voice outside. She stood up and walked to the door. A figure in a mechanical wheelchair appeared there. "Child, can you push this wheelchair into your office?" Barda smiled kindly. The president of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, who was feared and respected by many, felt like a little girl again. She walked behind the wheelchair and pushed Bardas into the room. Zoro was so flustered to see Bardas that his face turned red. "Lord Bardas, I greet you most humbly," said Zoro. Bardas waved his hand and didn't say anything. Nami pushed the wheelchair toward the coffee table, and she poured a cup of tea for Bardas. "This is not bad. This tea is refreshing," said Bardas. "I can have it sent to your place," said Nami. "There's no need. I'll get tired of it if I drink it every day." Teacher, why are you here? Asked Nami. Can't I visit you without a reason? Bardas grinned. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. I do hope you visit me every day. Did Lord Yuan come to your store? Yes. That lord is decent. I'm more interested in the dark demon dragon that walks by her side. Maybe they can succeed where others have failed, said Bardas. Nami was surprised to hear that. Her teacher was an expert. He used to be a demigod. She never heard him praise any other lords before. If someone managed to make an impression on him, they would indeed be extraordinary. It was incredible that Yuan and Yuan had managed to make quite an impression on him. Teacher, what's so special about Lord Yuan? How did she manage to make an impression on you? Bardas looked at Nami. Don't you know her well? Not really. I don't know much about Lord Yuan or the Dark Demon Dragon, for that matter. Is she really that special? Asked Nami. All she knew about Yuan was from Zoro's endless appreciation of her and her territory. Yuan had remained so quiet and aloof, so she didn't know how strong he was. As for Yuan's strength, Zoro wasn't clear about that. From their recent interaction, Nami saw that Yuan was diplomatic, but she still didn't understand Yuan that well. The fact that she stands out from other lords and has made it to the first rank makes her special, said Bardas. She is the strongest among the lords. Nami was stunned. That's right. Yuan is ranked first among the lords. You should try to learn more about the lords and how they function. Ranked first? Is Lord Yuan really at the top of the ladder? Asked Nami in disbelief. Zoro was a little less surprised than Nami. He believed Bardas. Zoro had always felt that Lord Yuan was extraordinary. Zoro looked at Nami. Even Bardas acknowledged Yuan's prowess. Nami looked conflicted. Everything made sense now. It was no wonder Tristana had given away the Lavender Manor so willingly. Nami realized that Tristana was a very smart person. She could already see Yuan's potential before anyone else. Teacher, did you ask her to visit the temple? Yes. I gave that mission to so many before her. One more doesn't make a difference, said Bardas. Teacher, the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce has done its best to work with the lords. It's certain that giving resources for free to the lords doesn't work. They can't enter the temple. If it was easy, I wouldn't have had to spend 10 years on this. Don't worry. We can only hope that Yuan can succeed. I still have 3 months to live, said Bardas. Teacher, you will be fine. I believe that Lord Yuan will definitely succeed. I've lived long enough. In the past 10 years, I've failed countless times, so I'm mentally prepared for any outcome, said Bardas wistfully. If Yuan fails, the Crimson Moon is yours. Bardas had spent so much of his life building his dream. He could let it all go to waste. Nami could revive the store and use it. She had proved herself, after all. Kanglan City was too small for her to row. The world was her stage. Your vision shouldn't be limited to just lords. You already know that Yuan's progress is because of that dark demon dragon. As soon as Bardas finished speaking, a mysterious figure in a black cloak appeared behind him. Zoro and Nami didn't look surprised. Chapter 362, Bayan and her rebuttal. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. President Nami, it's not only Lord Bardas's wish to hand over the Crimson Moon to you. All the elders agree on it too, said the cloaked figure. Other than Lord Bardas, only Nami was qualified to lead the Crimson Moon. Teacher, you will be fine. The Crimson Moon should be led by you. No one can replace you, said Nami. I know, said Bardas. But people die. That's the fact of life. Bardas smiled at her kindly. Even if he obtained God's heart, he would die someday. The Crimson Moon needed an heir. It was time for the gods to fear the Crimson Moon. They had prepared for 10 years. When I eventually die, you must take over, said Bardas to Nami. Nami looked at Bardas and couldn't say a word. On the bustling streets of Kanglan City, a carriage with the emblem of a noble family headed to Lavender Manor. When the soldiers patrolling the streets saw the emblem on the carriage, they stopped what they were doing and saluted. Everyone made way for the carriage. Everyone knew who that carriage belonged to. In the sky, there were even several squadrons of Pegasus knights patrolling above the carriage. They kept a close eye on everything that happened below. If anything was amiss, they would swoop down to attack or defend as needed. The carriage belonged to Archduke Qingyu's only daughter, Bayan. Molly, why do you think Tristana gave the Lavender Manor to the Lord? Bayan asked her maid inside the carriage. Your Highness, Lady Tristana is far from naive. She must have had a very good reason for doing so. There must be something special to that lord, said Molly. Tristana is the eldest daughter of the Grand Duke Frostwolf. I don't think the lord is greater in status than a noble. I've never heard of Lady Tristana doing such a thing before. Bayan and Tristana were good friends. When Tristana's father had given her the manor, Bayan had helped her set it up. If the lord was trying to dupe Tristana, she needed to protect Tristana. The carriage finally arrived in front of the Lavender Manor. Bayan got out of the carriage and went straight to the main hall in a hurry. Nov. L. B//JNN. Tristana was there in the main hall. Why didn't you come and meet me after you reached? Asked Bayan impatiently. Tristana turned to look at her. Bayan glared daggers at her. I was tired from the journey. I rested a bit. Today, I went shopping with Lord Yuan in the black market. Tristana smiled and reached out to hold Bayan's hand. Sister Nami said that you gave away the Lavender Manor to Lord Yuan. Yes. Is there a problem? Yuan had given her the victory gem. How could a mere manor compare to that? Besides, Lord Su Yuan had said that he trusted her. I worked hard on this manor with you, you just gave it away? I have never seen you do something like this before, said Beiyan resentfully. Is she doing something to you? Blackmailing you or something? Tristana didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Beiyan, it was my choice. I chose to give the manor to her willingly. Besides, you already know that enchantments don't work on the Frost Wolf bloodline. But why? She is just an ordinary lord like any other. Zoro does boast about how extraordinary Sowan's territory is, but Zoro boasts about everything? That can't have made such an impression on you. Tristana had only visited the territory once. What did she find there that made her this way? Beiyan was puzzled. She had seen so many lords in Kanglan City trying to earn Tristana's favor. Tristana had paid them no mind. Beiyan, Lord Suwan isn't any ordinary lord. The dark demon dragon beside her is also extremely powerful. Beiyan looked at Tristana. What's so special about her anyway? If the manor was given to the strongest lord, then it would make sense. Tristana had just bought the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk from Suwan, but that wasn't reason enough to give the lord a manor? Tristana frowned. Beiyan belittling Suwan made her feel uneasy. Beiyan, it was my choice to give away the manor. Besides, Suwan is ranked first among the lords. Why is that so hard for you to accept? She is ranked first. Beiyan was shocked. Tristana was just about to respond when Claude entered the hall. Lady Tristana, I have already informed your family about the victory gem you obtained. The Grand Duke Frostwolf had nothing but praise for you, said Claude. He couldn't see Beiyan because she was standing a little away from his line of sight. Chapter 363, Su Yuan and Beiyan. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Praise be to the Ice Goddess. A victory gem? I can still scarcely believe it. Claude as he walked into the room. Lady Tristana, the goddess truly guided us to Lord Suwan. Who would have thought such a rare treasure would be in the hands of Lord Suwan? When he finally reached Tristana, he saw Beiyan. Claude swallowed the rest of his words and bowed to Beiyan. Your Highness. Victory gem? You have obtained the victory gem that can summon the goddess. Beiyan looked at Tristana in disbelief. Yes. Lord Suwan got it on one of her expeditions. Lord Su Yuan and Lord Suwan, they gave it to me. Tristana opened her palm and a gem materialized there. Beiyan could sense the magical energy within it. Beiyan looked conflicted. She had assumed that Suwan had tricked Tristana into giving away the manor, but it seemed it wasn't that simple. She understood why Tristana felt that associating with Suwan was beneficial. The victory gem wasn't an ordinary gem. There were records in the scrolls of how legendary masters used the victory gem to summon the goddess of victory and advanced to become a demigod. Beiyan was silent for a while. Tristana, can you introduce me to Lord Suwan too? She asked after a while. After returning from the black market, Suwan and Su Yuan had nothing to do for the next few days. They visited the Kanglan City Hall and transferred the ownership of the Lavender Manor to Suwan's name. The manor was now hers. In the future, it would serve as a base for the Chamber of Commerce. Tristana wasn't even sad. She was very satisfied that she could offer some help. Suwan took advantage of their free time and went to explore Kanglan City with Tristana. While admiring the scenery and the culture, Suwan also closely observed the layout of the city. Suwan learned a lot from just observing the buildings. She now had various ideas to improve her territory. Kanglan City was big and bustling but orderly. Although various things in the city were far from perfect, everything was created with local convenience in mind. Kanglan City was worthy of being called the most prosperous city. The only difference Suwan noticed was that of a figure who accompanied them frequently. The beautiful person who always tagged along was Beiyan, daughter of Archduke Xingyu. She was very young. She might not even be in her 20s yet. Yet, she handled the merchant association. What amused Suwan was that this young girl always accompanied her and Su Yuan. She wanted to find some common topic to talk about. Beiyan even mentioned the victory gem a few times. Suwan understood what Beiyan wanted. When it came to Tristana, Suwan was willing to build a relationship with her. Tristana was smart and formidable and undoubtedly would become Grand Duke Frostwolf in the future. Beiyan, in comparison, was just a child playing around in the world because the title she held was given to her without any problem. Suwan and Su Yuan had no interest in dealing with someone like that, even if she had her father's backing. Beiyan was familiar with lords fawning over her to earn her favor. When Suwan didn't extend the same courtesy, she felt slighted and decided to try even harder. She wondered why Suwan favored Tristana so much and didn't even give her any attention. That made Beiyan even more curious about Suwan. Beiyan was like a child competing with others for attention. When Tristana saw Beiyan pestering Suwan, she apologized to Suwan in private. She told her not to take her attempts to heart. Beiyan was an entitled individual with a stubborn personality. Suwan didn't say anything. That evening, in the main hall of the Lavender Manor, Beiyan tried to talk to Suwan again. Lord Suwan, is there really a dark swamp outside your territory? How did you create it? Asked Beiyan. Suwan took a sip of her tea. Su Yuan, what is the underground city like? If I visit your territory, will you take me to the underground city to take a look? I heard that there is a black dragon treasure trove in the underground world. There are spider lairs everywhere. I want to explore it. If I can find a few dragon eggs, it would be great. Beiyan asked them endless questions. Suwon and Su Yuan didn't mind. Sure, Your Highness, said Suwon. We can definitely show you around. But will your father let you leave Kanglan City? I'm already level 44. If I reach level 45, I'll have the freedom to make my own decisions. Then we'll talk about it when you are level 45, said Su Yuan. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Lord Su Yuan, you're very kind. Beiyan rolled her eyes. Thank you so much, said Su Yuan. I'm not actually complimenting you, UB****. Your Highness, you can't curse in here, said Tristana. Don't you dare talk to me like that, said Su Yuan to Beiyan. Tristana was amused as she watched Beiyan and Su Yuan bicker with each other. She felt that it was about time someone talked to Beiyan so directly. As Su Yuan and Beiyan got into a heated argument, footsteps sounded at the door. Lady Tristana, there are 3 lords outside who wish to see Lord Suwon, said George. The 2 of them worked here before as servants, but the other one, I've never seen him before. Tristana turned to look at Suwon. Suwon looked eager. Did they find out something about the soul contract? Although the reward for the S-class mission was already decided, Suwon felt that it would be better if she could find the soul contract another way and avoid the dangerous mission. She didn't want to venture blindly into the treacherous temple. Chapter 364, An Interesting Dungeon. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. If Suwon could find the soul contract and subdue the vampire duke before entering the temple, that would be great. She would be more confident then. Please let them in, said Suwon. Lord Suwon, why are the lords looking for you? Asked Beiyan. She was indeed a very curious child. Some personal matters. Did you visit Nightingale Street, Lord Su Yuan? Asked Beiyan with interest. Su Yuan almost choked on the hot tea. He coughed. Nightingale Street was the most famous place in Kanglan City. It was a brothel that was cheap and affordable but provided outstanding service. What are you even talking about? Said Su Yuan. I heard that most lords visit Nightingale Street when they come to Kanglan City, said Beiyan. I have never been there. I don't even know what the place looks like. Why don't we go there tonight? Don't even think about it, said Su Yuan. You go straight to your house and sleep early. Do you understand me? You're not allowed to go anywhere near that place. If I take you to a brothel, your father will wipe out our territory. The 2 lords from before approached the main hall with a bald man. Is this the manor that was given away to that other lord? Asked the bald man as he looked around enviously. How many resources would it take to buy a manor like this? Yes. Why would I lie to you? You'll understand when you meet the lord. It's a pity that we didn't obtain any information about the soul contract. Otherwise, we could claim 2 A-class treasures. The information we have is not any less important than the soul contact. I hope so. The 3 people reached the main hall. They felt inadequate. Even though they were lords, they still had to request an audience with another lord. The difference in their status was too vast. The bald man saw Suwon seated at the head of the table. He opened the attribute panels to learn about the identities of the people in the hall. There was the eldest daughter of the Grand Duke Frostwolf seated on the right. He was stunned to see Her Highness, Beiyan. He also saw a handsome man, but his attributes were all masked. He could only find out that the man was some kind of hero. Beiyan and Tristana sat on the left and right of Suwon, respectively. The bald lord couldn't understand why they were in the main seat. Was the lord that powerful? Suwon didn't know what the man was thinking. The 2 women had left the seat at the head of the table to Suwon. Suwon didn't care. It was just a seat, after all. She hadn't expected the bald man to be this shocked over it. The 2 lords bowed to Suwon. Did you find anything about the soul contract? Asked Suwon. Although we have put many lords to the task, we haven't been able to find anything till now, said one of the lords. Then, do you have something else you want to tell me? Asked Suwon. Yes, Brother Knight, go on. The bald man stood up straight. He looked at Suwon. He couldn't believe it. This was the lord who was ranked first. Before he reached here, he had assumed that the 2 lords were fooling him. However, when he saw Suwon, his doubts disappeared. The 2 lords had actually managed to get in contact with Suwon. Lord Suwon, I have a small tavern in the south of the city. Many people come there. Yesterday, I was inquiring about the soul contract when I came across a special piece of information. I thought you might be interested, so we came here without any delay. Suwon nodded. Go on. The bald man glanced at the 2 other women present there. Don't worry. Tristana and Beiyan are friends. I trust them, said Suwon. That made Tristana and Beiyan immensely happy. The person who told me about this was in Nightingale Street for personal matters. He completed a special mission and came across a dungeon key. Beiyan turned to Suwon as though to say, I told you so, n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Is there anything special about that particular dungeon? Suwon ignored Beiyan. There are a total of 10 factions competing against each other in the dungeon. Each faction can have 5 players. The winner will receive a treasure. What kind of treasure? Asked Suwon. A faction treasure. I saw some lords post about it in the forums. You can receive a treasure that is compatible with your territory. The winner can choose whether they want equipment, weapons, or armor. The player who had posted that had received the Dark Tree of Life with which he had summoned a level 42 gold elf of SS class. Lord Suwon, maybe you can compete and win something to recruit a more powerful troop type. You can even summon heroes. Chapter 365, The Hyena. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The bald man knew that the dungeon would be a piece of cake for Yuan. Yuan was intrigued. Dark Life Tree, a level 42 soldier, 1. When will the dungeon open? Are there any limitations in the dungeon? You can register for the dungeon in advance. Once the quota is filled, it will open. How many people do you have now? Just me, these 2 lords, you, and the other lord who found out about the dungeon. 5 of us. Call the other lord too. If the information you have given is accurate, I'll join. Alright, I'll go now. The 3 lords turned and left the manor. Being on Yuan's good side could win them many favors. Yuan looked at the receding backs of the lords. She felt a little sentimental. She could finally explore a dungeon with other lords. Hopefully, their journey would turn out to be interesting and fruitful. Just as the 3 lords left, a notification appeared. The crimson moon is going to rise from the ashes. The gods will fall into despair. The situation of the Overlord plane might change drastically. Lords, please be prepared. Yuan looked at the notification and frowned. What is the crimson moon? She wondered if it was a dungeon or a ruin, or maybe some anti-god alliance. The notification gave too little information to make out anything. Yuan opened the forum of the lords to check. The forum was flooded with posts and comments. What is the crimson moon? I feel like something bad is going to happen. I am a believer of the sun god. The crimson moon is going to rise tomorrow. Maybe this is a new opportunity. Most lords just spouted nonsense in the forum and didn't seem to know anything useful about the recent notification. Yuan opened her group chat in disappointment. Zhao Qingrong had sent a message. Zhao Qingrong, so, I found out that a group of powerful people allied together to subdue the gods and use them as research subjects to gain more power. They are planning to attack the believers in the main plane. Without the believers, the gods would lose their power. Yuan was surprised. The crimson moon seemed very ferocious. Using gods as research subjects sounded like an unattainable ambition. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. What kind of impact would the death of a god have on the world in general? There were so many ruthless people in the world. Yuan was thinking about how this would affect her territory. Yuan, is there any other important information? Zhao Qingrong, Crimson Moon sounds formidable. My suggestion would be to join them as soon as possible. Maybe we can get benefits out of it as well. Later, I don't think they would be willing to take in anyone. Yuan also expressed her approval. It would not be easy for the gods to fall, and the impact of it would be felt by all. After chatting with Zhao Qingrong for a while, she sent a private message to Lin Yao. Lin Yao replied in an instant. Lin Yao, I've pretty much figured out everything about the Vampire Duke. There are about 5,000 vampires in the castle. Their average level is 45. Their leader is a vampire marquise of level 48. The defense of the castle is very tight. It's difficult to break in. The strength of the vampires was no less than the beastmen that she had fought with. Yuan needed to find time to visit the vampire castle. The vampire castle was an ancient castle with a blood coffin. It was possible that they might find other nice things there. Yuan, continue with your investigation. If you find any new information, inform me. Also, I have something for you. Yuan sent the token to Lin Yao through a special space route. With the token, Lin Yao would be able to seek Tristaina's help if she encountered any danger. It only cost Yuan 300 units of resources to send the parcel. This is the token of the Frost Wolf clan from the Ice Empire. Lin Yao was surprised. That's right. When you visit the Ice Empire to investigate the castle, take it with you. Lin Yao was excited to visit the Ice Empire. They ended their chat there. Yuan was deep in thought. The rise of the Crimson Moon was something she needed to study to be able to plan her next course of action, but she still had time for that. Lord Yuan, what are you thinking about? Said Baiyan. I called your name twice, and you didn't even hear me. Oh, why were you calling for me? Asked Yuan impatiently. Lord Yuan, why are you using that tone of voice with me? Asked Baiyan indignantly. Do you have a problem with it? Do I look like I care? You big bully. Tristana smiled as she watched them bicker. Despite Baiyan's rudeness, she got along fine with Yuan and Su Yuan. That made her happy. Baiyan muttered resentfully before realizing that she had come here to say something to Yuan. Lord Yuan, can't you convince Lord Su Yuan to take me to Nightingale Street? So many lords go there, and I want to see what's so special about that place. Yuan was speechless. Baiyan was young and curious about everything. Su Yuan had already told her that Nightingale Street was a brothel. Doesn't she know what a brothel is? Your Highness, please stay a little away from me, said Yuan. Why, I think I dislike you a little. You're annoying. How dare you? Just as they talked and bickered with each other, a grotesque figure entered the manor. The creature looked like an orc. It had a domineering lion head and imposing sideburns. Lord Yuan, this is the lord who obtained the key to the dungeon. He is called the hyena. Yuan almost spat out her tea. The first thought in her mind was why was he called the hyena when his head was that of a lion? Chapter 366, Yuan teams up with the hyena. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Lord Yuan, I never thought I would get the chance to team up with you, said the hyena as he looked at Yuan excitedly. The hyena was a little reluctant to team up with other lords, but when he heard that it was Yuan, he was convinced. The others might have told you already. I need to take a look at the key before I decide to team up with you, said Yuan. Of course, said the hyena as she took out a crystal chess piece from the system space. Yuan reached out for it. She felt magical energy radiate from the piece. Chess piece. Level 3. Characteristic: the holder can open a special faction dungeon and compete with players from other factions. The final winner will receive generous rewards. Current applications: total needed 5. Applications received 4. Total number of factions: 10. Current total number of applicants: A3. Need 50 people to activate the dungeon. Note: in ancient times, the gods created such treasures in order to resolve disputes. The gods in dispute would each send some of their believers to the dungeon. The god would accept the victor without objections. Yuan then activated the true eye of the demon dragon to check the chess piece once again. Nov. L. B /JNN. More details were revealed. Discovered dungeon. Life and death battle chess. Dungeon level 3. Average military strength, brilliant. Heroes, yes. Boss unit, yes. Highest level unit, level 65. Faction, 10 dark, light, elf, etc. Note: unable to upgrade dungeon level. Yuan gasped. The highest level of something present in the dungeon was level 65. Could there be a god inside the dungeon? Since the gods created such a treasure to solve disputes, they wouldn't fight personally. Yuan realized that it might not be a god but a paragon. Yuan let out a sigh of relief. I'm in, said Yuan and handed the chess piece back to the hyena. The hyena smiled. With such a powerful lord in his team, the benefits will be great. The people of the other teams would probably *T their pants if they saw Yuan in his team. The hyena took the chess piece back and requested Yuan to drip her blood on it. Yuan did as instructed. Her blood fused with the chess piece and the number of applicants turned to 5. It was just enough to fill the quota. Beiyan couldn't hold herself back. Lord Yuan, are you going to explore a dungeon? More or less. Yuan smiled. And, don't even think about it. I'm not taking you with me. You have to wait till you are of age. You can't even leave Kanglan City right now. Fine, said Beiyan. I won't ask. But can you please convince Lord Yuan to take me to Nightingale Street? Beiyan walked to Yuan and held his arms. Please take me there. The other lords were shocked. She was the daughter of the legendary ascetic, Qingyu, and the heiress of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Why was she asking a man to take her to Nightingale Street? The lords turned to look at Yuan. Did he trick her? Beiyan was naive. She must have been charmed by the man, but she was still very young. Yuan sighed. He pulled his hands away. You arc like the princess of Kanglan City. Aren't you worried about your reputation? Beiyan was furious that her charms hadn't worked on Yuan. She sat back down on the chair. She thought of something and looked at the other lords present in the room. Is there anything else? Yuan asked the lords hurriedly before Beiyan could speak. No. If there is nothing else, you all can go. Lord Yuan, we'll visit you again once everyone is here in Kanglan City. Please don't leave the city in these 2 days. Yuan nodded. The lords left in a hurry. Yuan laughed and shook her head. Beiyan was indeed something else. Yuan looked at Beiyan. He smiled at her as though to console her. Beiyan, I can take you along to our territory in the future. I can take you to collect honey and explore the underground world. I can even show you the alchemy technology that the dwarves are currently developing. Beiyan's eyes lit up. She wanted to leap for joy, but her pride stopped her. All right. You're the one who invited me. I didn't ask you to take me there. Of course, Your Highness, said Yuan. If he had a little sister, Yuan felt that she would be like Beiyan. Headstrong, talkative, and endlessly curious. Besides, her father was the legendary ascetic who practically ruled the whole of Kanglan City. Maintaining a good relationship with Beiyan wasn't entirely a waste. Yuan didn't care about that. He had warmed up to Beiyan, and he wanted to put a smile on her face. In front of Lavender Manor, there was a brand new plaque. It was wrapped in a red silk cloth. There were some words written on the plaque in the city's native language. It read Lavender Business Guild. The plaque was enchanted with a language proficiency spell. It didn't matter which language the people spoke. The spell made sure that the people passing by would understand what the plaque said when they glanced at it. The native language was important. It was the language left behind by the god of creation. Chapter 367, Establishment of the Lavender Business Guild. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan looked at the brand new plaque. She was in a good mood. She had intended to name it Dusk Chamber of Commerce 1 but then decided it sounded a little dull. The Lavender Business Guild sounded just right. With the plaque already in place, the Dark Territories Chamber of Commerce was finally established. However, it was still empty. Yuan didn't even have anyone to manage the Chamber of Commerce right now. Lord Yuan, congratulations, said Tristana. I believe that the Lavender Business Guild will soon flourish under your leadership. Tristana was ecstatic. She had suggested the name Lavender Business Guild, but she hadn't expected Yuan to accept it so readily. She was even happier that all future transactions would be done in this Chamber of Commerce. Tristana wouldn't have to take a long and arduous journey to Yuan's territory. Now, one think you should focus on building a foundation and networks in Kanglan City for this Chamber of Commerce. The Frost Wolf family doesn't have much influence here, so one might not be able to help you much. Yuan smiled at Tristana. Tristana, you've already done so much for me, you gave me this manor, one couldn't ask for more. Altis nothing compared to the victory gem you gave me, said Tristana. Tristana and Yuan looked at each other friendly. They had become good friends by now. Lord Yuan, Baiyan will be able to help. Her Solon Merchant Association has not been established for a long, but it has the full support of Kanglan City. She can help you establish yourself. Even President Nairn's branch of Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce might not compare to Baiyan's influence. Yuan nodded. She looked around. Baiyan hadn't come to the Lavender Manor this morning. Just then, a luxurious carriage emblazoned with a coat of arms appeared in front of the manor. Horses neighed as the carriage came to a stop. A maid got out of the carriage and helped a woman out of the carriage. The plaque is already hung? Lord Yuan, why didn't you wait for me? Baiyan had dark circles around her eyes. She glared at Yuan. We agreed yesterday that I'd get to hang the plaque. We also agreed to meet early in the morning. What time is it now? Baiyan took out an exquisite pocket watch and glanced at it. One woke up late. I'm so sorry. Yuan laughed. It's all right. It's not a big thing to hang a plaque anyway. Go on in. Baiyan smiled. Lord Yuan, establishing your Chamber of Commerce is a big thing. I have a gift for you. She took out a black long sword from the system space. The scabbard was decorated with lavender flowers. Although the lavender flowers didn't match the long sword, the gift was prepared with utmost care. Yesterday, I went to the warehouse and tried to find something that would suit you. Baiyan extended the sword for Yuan to take and pretended to appear indifferent. Yuan reached out and took it. When she looked at the lavender flowers on the scabbard, she was touched. The lavender was hand-painted on the scabbard. It was wobbly and crooked. Yuan realized that Baiyan had painted it herself. Thank you for your gift. I like it very much. Yuan smiled. Baiyan looked ecstatic. She was like a child receiving praise. Yuan reached out and patted her on the head. She chuckled when Baiyan looked angry and pushed her hand away. They returned to the manor. Yuan checked the attributes of the black longsword she had received. The Sword of the Morning Dead. Level, S class. Special characteristics, summon level 1 Mournful Guardians, limited to 1 squadron. After the Mournful Guardian is killed, it can be summoned again the next day. After killing an enemy, you can directly revive the enemy's corpse and convert them to your side. The number of corpses cannot exceed 3 squadrons. The damage to the corpses cannot exceed 70%. The power of the resurrected corpses depends on the strength of the corpses. You cannot resurrect heroic units. After killing an enemy, you can extract the enemy's soul and imprison it in the sword. When attacking, the sword will let out a resentful roar and attack the enemy's spirit. Vengeful Spirit Rage Slash can release a vengeful spirit trapped in the sword at once to attack the enemy's soul. Note, a longsword made by a powerful, evil sorcerer, filled with evil power. Yuan turned to look at Baiyan who was stuffing her mouth with snacks. Baiyan was indeed very rich. The sword was extraordinary. With the sword, one person could summon a whole army. The Sword of the Mournful Dead was definitely a top-notch treasure. If the other lords found out that she had received such a gift, they would all blow their tops off with envy. This was definitely a generous gift. Putting away the sword, Yuan looked at the cheerful Baiyan and told her about Tristana's suggestion. The Lavender Business Guild has been established, but there is a shortage of personnel to maintain it. Do you know of a way to recruit talented people? Tea, said Baiyan with her mouth full of snacks. She gulped down her tea. What did you just say? Docs the Solon Merchant Association have any way to recruit talented professionals for the Lavender Business Guild? Tristana reiterated. We caught a silver goblin a few months ago, said Baiyan. He does seem powerful. Do you mind using a goblin? Asked Baiyan. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Silver Goblin. Yuan was unfamiliar with such creatures. She had dark goblins in her territory who were raising the scarlet flame demon spiders in her territory. What's the difference between a silver goblin and a dark goblin? Is the silver goblin more proficient in trade? Chapter 368, Chamber of Commerce's Arrangement. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The silver goblins are better than other types of goblins. They have extraordinary intelligence and are skilled in commerce. This makes them the best merchants, said Tristana. If that's true, the creature seems to be of high value. Why wasn't it sold after being imprisoned? Is it difficult to subdue? Asked Yuan. They are very easy to subdue. It's just that the silver goblins are greedy by nature and are very difficult to manage. Their greed was equal to their talent in trade and business. Other Chamber of Commerce refused to use them. Yuan was interested. She knew the value of goblins. Without the dark goblins of her territory, it would have been impossible to breed and raise the scarlet flame demon spiders. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Baiyan, can you please send that silver goblin here? Asked Yuan. Perhaps I can find a use for it. Baiyan nodded and waved her hand to instruct the maid beside her. The maid promptly left the hall. The Lavender Business Guild was like an empty shell right now. Yuan didn't mind using a goblin. She would settle for anything right now because she didn't really have any other available choice at the moment. Footsteps sounded at the door. Moments later, Zoro blundered into the hall. Lord Yuan, how nice to meet you again. Your Highness, you're here too. Zoro bowed. And Lady Tristana, beautiful as ever. President Nami wanted to come here personally to congratulate you on the establishment of the Lavender Business Guild, but she had urgent business to attend to at the last minute. She left Kanglan City with Lord Bardas this morning, said Zoro apologetically. Zoro had rushed over as soon as he could get away, but he still missed the ceremony. President Nami sent me here to congratulate you and apologize on her behalf, said Zoro. Suwon didn't mind. She understood. It was normal for a chamber of commerce as big as the President's Nami to have urgent businesses. Zoro said Nami left with Bardas. Suwon thought of the old Bardas who was still alive without a heart. Nami was someone important if she was close to a person as strong as Bardas. Were they trying to explore the temple that hides God's heart? That's all right, said Nami. There is nothing to apologize for. I completely understand. You came at the right time. The Lavender Business Guild needs to recruit people who are proficient in trade. Beiyan recommended the Silver Goblin to me. I'm worried that those greedy races might cause trouble. Does the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce have any ideas? Suwon was glad that she had established a good relationship with the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, the Frost Wolf family, and Beiyan. All three groups were very powerful and well-connected. When Zoro heard about the Silver Goblin, his face turned ugly. Lord Suwon, we bought some slaves a few days ago. They are half-feathered people. If these half-feathered people are used, they can monitor the Silver Goblin. The Silver Goblins had great knowledge of business, but they needed someone to supervise the goblins. Zoro, can you bring the half-feathered people here? Asked Suwon. As you wish, said Zoro. Zoro left in a hurry. Suwon was glad to have people who were of great help. It would have been so difficult for the other lords to do this. Now that she had what she needed, Suwon needed to build a good foundation for trade as soon as possible. The ordinary resources could upgrade 2 of her troops, but others required rare resources. Her territory was still lacking in resources. The Lavender Business Guild had an important task. It would have to generate enough resources to support territory. About an hour later, a maid approached Suwon to inform her that the Silver Goblins and the half-feathered people were here. Suwon got up and walked out of the hall in high spirits. The front of the Lavender Manor had a green and lush lawn. Around 50 silver goblins had gathered there under the watchful eyes of the guards. They were about a meter tall. Their faces were very contorted. The creatures looked nightmarish. Other than their color, they weren't much different from the dark goblins in her territory. Beside the silver goblins stood 20 half-feathered people. They had short wings on their backs, but they couldn't fly. They were bound in chains. The half-feathered people raised their heads as Suwon approached. Their eyes held arrogance and contempt. Suwon opened their attribute panels. Silver Goblin. Level 47. Abilities. Negotiation, C rank, can increase the success rate when negotiating with outsiders. Inquiry, C rank. When conducting business, they can easily find out the base price. Information scouting, C rank, extremely sensitive to all kinds of business information, able to find the business information quickly. Persuasion, C rank, very persuasive. Customers easily believe these creatures. Intimidation and deception, C rank. When deceiving the target, additional credibility is added. Race talent, fever and greed. Has an unimaginable desire for wealth and will endlessly earn it. Traveling merchant, if the number of people exceeds 10, the efficiency of dealing with business matters will increase by 10%. If their number exceeds 20, the efficiency will increase by 20%. If their number exceeds 50, the efficiency will increase by 30%. Note, silver goblins are natural-born merchants. Their thirst for wealth gives them an extraordinary ability to trade and negotiate very efficiently. Chapter 369, Tristana and Beiyan are shocked. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Suwon was satisfied with the attributes of the goblin. This world was indeed huge and had its wonders. The silver goblin's skills and attributes were all related to trade and commerce in one way or another. It was no wonder Tristana and Beiyan felt that the silver goblins were very efficient. However, their greed was something else. The silver goblins would willingly seek death if they could get wealthy. Even dragons weren't that greedy. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Suwon ignored the goblins and looked at the feathermen. The half-feathered people were collectively known as the feathermen. They were a hybrid of humans and birds. The feathermen looked like angels. However, angels were extremely powerful. These feathermen, in contrast, didn't even match up to a fraction of the angel's strength. They couldn't even fly. Feathermen. Level 4.8. Skills, they have strong bodies. They're nimble. Masters of archery. Race talent, true language. They can distinguish truth and lies, no matter how deceptive the person speaking might be. Binding strictly, the hierarchy within the feathermen is considered absolute. They will follow their leaders with 100% loyalty. Note, a life form that possesses the bloodline of the feather race, but the feathermen inherited only a fraction of the strength of the feather race. Their abilities and attributes were ordinary. Nothing really stood out. Only their racial talent was something that intrigued Suwon. The feathermen spoke the true language. That was a powerful tool? Suwon frowned. She felt that it would be quite useful if these two types of creatures could manage the Lavender Business Guild. For now, Suwon only planned for the Lavender Business Guild to operate. The nuances and division of labor could be handled later. Beiyan, I want all these silver goblins. How much are they worth? The silver goblins are not worth much. You can have them. These creatures eat and drink and waste their time in the dungeon all day. Bayan shrugged. The silver goblins were talented, but not many people liked owning them. For rich nobles, it wasn't difficult to find better and more efficient workers. Bayan just gave the silver goblins to Yuan for free. Yuan was grateful. If she found anything useful in the future, she'd give it to Bayan for free. Lord Yuan, if you fancy the feathermen, you can keep them as well. Please consider it a gift on this most important occasion, said Zoro. After finding out about Yuan's identity, the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce wanted to establish a good relationship with Yuan. Yuan thanked them both. She then turned to the two groups of creatures. Yuan walked in front of them and let her aura radiate and surge around them. The silver goblins and the feathermen kneeled and pressed their heads on the ground as they bowed to Yuan. Great Lord, we are willing to become your slaves. Please spare our lives, said one of the silver gnomes with a trembling voice. The feathermen couldn't withstand the force of her energy. They collapsed to the ground in fear. Their previous arrogance disappeared. Do you submit? Are you willing to work for me? Yes, said one of the feathermen. We are willing. The leader of the feathermen knelt in front of her. The Eternal Wind Feather race is willing to follow you for life, my lord. A notification appeared after the two creatures had submitted themselves to Yuan. Silver goblins, 52, are willing to submit to you. Do you accept? Feathermen, 20, are willing to submit to you. Do you accept? Yuan chose yes. She then retracted her aura. The silver goblins and the feathermen were relieved. Yuan looked at them. They looked ragged. Their clothes were torn, and they looked miserable. Head to the backyard and change your clothes. Clean your wounds. You will be provided with some food. After that, send a messenger from among you to find me in the main hall of the manor, said Yuan. Yuan gestured to some of the servants to lead the group to the backyard. As Yuan headed back inside, she was deep in thought. Who should I choose to supervise the Lavender Business Guild in my absence? Yuan wondered if she could choose anyone from her territory. She realized that she hadn't really trained anyone in her territory to manage trade and business. Time was too short to start now. Yuan knew everything, but he was always lazy and unwilling to do things. If she asked him to manage a group of people, he would refuse outright. Yuan wondered if she could find someone in the underground world who was talented enough to manage the Lavender Business Guild. If she couldn't find anyone at all, she would visit the slave market to find someone who was capable. With her options in place, Yuan headed into the hall and noticed Tristana and Bayan staring at her in shock. Chapter 370, The Manager of the Lavender Business Guild. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. What's with that look? Yuan reached out and pinched Bayan's cheek. Bayan didn't huff and push her hand away like she usually did but continued to look at her in awe. Nov. L. B /JNN. Lord Yuan, you have a halo skill, asked Bayan. Yuan realized that the halo skill wasn't something that everyone possessed. For example, there was the dragon's might, the angel's holy halo, and the supreme demon's evil halo. Ordinary lords and other common people didn't possess a halo. It was a power bestowed on someone by their ancient, dormant bloodline. Tristana and Bayan were in disbelief. They couldn't process the fact that a lord would be from such a powerful and ancient bloodline. Even the most powerful elves didn't have a halo. Yuan had obtained the halo with Yuan's help, but she couldn't tell that to anyone. I guess I'm just lucky, said Yuan. She had used it so many times before that she didn't feel like it was a big deal, but seeing Tristana and Bayan so surprised made her remember that having a halo skill was indeed rare. This is so unbelievable. Even my father, who is at the legendary level, doesn't have a halo, said Bayan. I was right, said Tristana. Lord Yuan is favored by the gods. Everything was surreal to Tristana. When she established a trade relationship with Yuan, she hadn't known that Yuan was not just a lord but the strongest among all other lords. Her territory had blown Tristana's mind away, and now she found out that Yuan possessed skills that even legendary-level lords didn't have. Tristana was baffled. Yuan seemed so extraordinary that if someone came to her and told her that the lord was a princess of some powerful and ancient empire, it wouldn't be very difficult to believe it. She didn't think anyone in this world had the ability or the potential to surpass Yuan. Lord Yuan, you're amazing. This is the first time in my life that I have seen a lord with a halo, said Bayan. Lord Yuan, would you like to follow the path of an ascetic? My father has never taken a pupil, but he would love to teach you. You're outstanding. Yuan laughed and pinched Bayan's cheek again. The ascetics had to renounce their armor and weapons and strengthen their bare bodies. Who would want to live like that? She could become stronger with Yuan's help anyway. She didn't want to become an ascetic. Bayan held Yuan's hand and asked her if she could teach her to develop a halo too. Tristana couldn't bear to look at Bayan's childish behavior. Yuan couldn't help but laugh at both of them. Bayan only let her hand go when Yuan agreed to teach her how to develop a halo. The servants helped the silver goblins and the feathermen to change into something decent. They gave them food and water and bandaged their wounds. Each group sent their respective messengers into the main hall to look for Yuan. The silver goblins liked to boast about their numbers, so they sent 12 people together, while the feathermen only sent their leader. Great lord, greetings, bowed the silver goblins. The featherman took a deep breath and bowed. I greet you most humbly, my lord. Yuan smiled at them. Both races were indeed different. She briefly told them about the arrangements she had made for the Lavender Business Guild. One, never mistreat the people of my territory. Although you're not qualified to join my territory right now, I'll reward you generously if you show me loyalty and value, said Yuan. I want both of your people to work in the Lavender Business Guild. The silver goblins have a strong foundation in commerce, so I want you to manage the buying and selling of the wares. You'll have the freedom to display your talents as you see fit without many restrictions. As for the feathermen, I want you to supervise everything that happens in the Lavender Business Guild. You will monitor how the guild operates and conduct checks on the staff every week. You'll report to me. The silver goblins and the feet herman heaved a sigh of relief. They were glad that they were safe. The arrangement was perfect. The silver goblins were very talented in business matters, but their greed was their greatest flaw. It made them reckless. The feathermen didn't have much knowledge about trade and commerce, but they were good at supervising and managing people. However, there was still a problem. Who would head the Lavender Business Guild? The silver goblins and the feathermen were staff who worked for the Lavender Business Guild, but they still needed a leader who would be in charge of the whole guild. Yuan thought about it. If she didn't have someone in charge of the guild, the whole purpose of making a guild in the first place would be defeated. There would be chaos. Yuan gestured to Annie, her maid. When she approached her, Yuan whispered something in her ear and gave her a token. It was the token to retrieve her troops from the space gate, where she had stored them before entering the city. Annie nodded and turned to leave. She ordered the servants to prepare a carriage to head out to the main gates of the city. Annie returned the following evening. There was someone beside her. Yuan was happy to see her. Annie had a good eye for things, so Yuan had asked her to bring along someone from her troops who would be most suitable to head the Lavender Business Guild. Yuan was pleasantly surprised to see that Annie had chosen Mestre. I greet you most humbly, my lord, said Mestre and bowed. Mestre was immensely grateful to Yuan. If it hadn't been for Yuan, she would have died in the swamps. After being taken into the territory and nurtured back to health, Mestre accepted the place as her home. She respected Yuan even more. Chapter 371, Can I Have a Hug? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Mestre, it's been so long since I saw you, said Yuan. Hero. Level, 48. Potential, B class. Occupation, Internal Affairs Officer. Abilities. Calmness, B rank. Has a calm and objective judgment on everything, is not affected by the turmoil of the situation, objective judgment increases by 40%. Intelligence, B rank. With keen observation and accurate judgment, intelligence increases by 20%. Commander-in-Chief, B rank. Has a unique method to manage subordinates, can make subordinates listen to their commands more easily and fear them. Increases dignity by 40%. Management, B rank. Has powerful methods to deal with complicated matters, work efficiency increases by 30%. Government affairs, B rank. Proficient in all kinds of territory affairs, able to handle them in the most efficient way, administrative ability increases by 30%. Race talent, can learn knowledge and skills of various races. Binding independent, becoming the person in charge raises all attributes by 30%, not activated yet. Note, a perfect administrative officer. Can be assigned important tasks. Mestre was a rare hero. A few months ago, the scouts that Yuan had sent out returned to report to her about some hero they found in the swamp. Yuan had gone out with them to investigate. In the broken temple, she had found Mestre. Yuan had tried to get her to safety but had accidentally triggered some mechanism in the temple. A dungeon had opened right then, with so many beings imprisoned inside. Yuan had rescued them all. The Dark Enchanter had taken Mestre as a pupil and taught her everything she knew. Mestre, the Lavender Business Guild is very important to our territory. It is newly established and basically empty. I would be grateful if you could manage the Lavender Business Guild. Yuan had two things to complete right now. First, she needed to build appropriate departments for the Silver Goblins and the Feathermen to work. Secondly, she needed to find more information on the types of wares that are bought the most in Kanglan City. Without that, she couldn't hope for the Lavender Business Guild to survive. The Lavender Business Guild was just a startup at this moment. It had a long way to go to establish itself as an important part of the city. Currently, all Yuan had to offer were the 100 Night Flower Honey and the Scarlet Flame Demon Spider Silk. Out of those, the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce had already booked the whole honey. The spider silks were for Tristana. Even the newly created wine would be bought by Tristana. Yuan needed to prepare for the territory to come up with new types of goods to be sold in the Lavender Business Guild. The food workshop had recently begun to formulate and produce unique recipes. It would definitely be a success in the future. Her trade with the underground world was going well. Maybe in the future, she could buy forged weapons from there and sell them here as well. The dwarves' endeavor at developing better alchemical weapons was also taking off nicely. All in all, there was a possibility for the Lavender Business Guild to flourish. Trading goods was the most convenient, safe, and hassle-free way to earn resources. However, it did require unique products that people would like to buy. Yuan was optimistic about this new venture. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Of course, my lord. I will not disappoint you, said Mestre. Yuan explained everything to her. She introduced Mestre to Tristana, Bayan, and Zoro. She told her that she could ask them for help if she encountered a problem in the future, and if Yuan wasn't available at short notice. Mestre looked at Suan in surprise. The Lord had left the territory for only a few days and had already built so many connections. Mestre was glad. Half the job was already done. Making connections was the most important thing when it came to setting up a business. Suan was worried. Mestre was more than capable in administrative affairs. The silver goblins were adept at trade, and there were the feathermen to keep them on their toes. Suan gathered the silver goblins and the feathermen and informed them that Mestre would be their manager and the leader of the Lavender Business Guild in her absence. Although Mestre was still young, the two other creatures didn't dare refute Suan's choice. Mestre called the silver goblins and the feathermen for a meeting in the other room so that they could discuss how they would be operating. Suan didn't join. It was important for them to be left alone so that they could figure out the dynamics among themselves. As the leader of the territory, she had a lot on her plate, and she sometimes needed to assign some of the jobs to others and let them handle it themselves. Tristana rushed to Suan, looking a little disappointed. "What's wrong?" asked Suan. "My father has called me home." "Did he already get in contact with the cardinal of the Victory Church to discuss the Victory Gem?" asked Suan. Tristana looked displeased. "You should look happier when you get to go home," said Yuan. "He's right," said Suan. "You can always come back here after you're done. In the future, I'll take you and Bayan along to my territory. We'll explore the underground world." Tristana looked a little better after that. She bit her lips and didn't say anything. "Can I have a hug?" she asked Yuan. Suan was stunned. She would have given her a piece of her mind if she wasn't an important friend. However, she let it be. Yuan didn't reject her. Tristana hugged him and then turned to hug Suan. Chapter 372, Parting Ways for a While. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Tristana was reluctant to let go. "Don't be sad," said Yuan. "Just come back soon." Tristana nodded. She took a deep breath and then smiled at them. "I'm afraid I won't be coming back to Kanglan City for a long time. I need to do some things back home." Her gaze was determined. She was going back home with a purpose, and she would fulfill it at all costs. Her mother had waited long enough. "That's right. You do what you need to do. I'm sure that we'll have to address you as Grand Duke Frostwolf when we meet next time," said Suan. That made Tristana laugh. "Can we at least have lunch with you, Grand Duke Tristana?" asked Yuan. Tristana chuckled and thanked them. In the end, she couldn't stay for lunch. She left with her soldiers in a hurry. She didn't even have time to say goodbye to her friend, Bayan. Suan and Yuan saw her off at the gate as she got into her carriage and sped away. They felt bittersweet. They had a feeling that he would indeed be the Grand Duke Frostwolf when they next met. "I look forward to the day when she would be given the title," said Yuan as he walked back to the manor with Suan. "Lord Suan, wait," said a voice from behind them before they could step into the manor. Suan turned around to find the two lords and the old bald man at the door. "What's wrong?" she asked. They all looked flustered. "The quota for the dungeon is full," said the hyena. "The dungeon will be activated soon." The hyena showed her the chess piece. Suan checked the attribute panel. It was true. The quote was full. There were a total of 50 competitors from 10 factions. The countdown had started. Please be prepared. The instant dungeon had its own rules. The lords couldn't take their troops with them, except for the initial hero. If lords die in the dungeon, they will be resurrected outside, but that would mean they are out of the game. The gods would be watching the battle. "Lords, please be prepared. The final winner will be rewarded by the gods." Suan read the descriptions a few more times. She found it interesting. It was unlike anything she had seen before. The dungeon prohibited the lords from bringing along any of their troops. Perhaps it was to test the lord's ability. Suan didn't feel like this was a big deal. She had Yuan by her side. He had even defeated a god before. The gods would give the reward. That intrigued Suan. Any reward given by a god wouldn't be something ordinary. Maybe she could get a divine artifact? Suan called for Mestre and told her that she would be away for a while. She would be in complete control of the Lavender Business Guild. Mestre nodded. Annie stayed with Mestre. Suan decided that her troops were safer here than anywhere else. She didn't have to worry about them in Kanglan City. When the countdown reached 0, the chess piece emitted a dazzling light and formed a void gate. Suan, Yuan, the bald man, and the others stepped through it. The gate shattered and disappeared. There was only darkness. Bayan was bored in the main hall. Mestre approached her. "Your Highness, Lord Yuan told me to apologize to you." "What?" said Bayan. "Why would Lord Yuan apologize to me? He doesn't apologize to anyone. Tell that girl that I'm leaving for now and she better behave properly when next we meet," said Mestre. That was what Lord Yuan said. Bayan gritted her teeth. That guy didn't know what respect meant. She was the princess of Kanglan City? She'd have him flogged next time. Mestre was baffled. She wondered if Bayan was mentally unstable. "Also, Lord Suan has temporarily entrusted all decisions about the Lavender Business Guild to you," said Mestre. "She told me that if I encounter any problem, I can always rely on your guidance." Bayan smiled in delight. Lord Suan said that. She raised her chin proudly. "That's right. I am good friends with your lord. If you have any problems, you can definitely tell me." Faction dungeon rules. Each faction has 5 lords. They each guard a chess piece. When a high-level chess piece bearer fights a low-level chess piece bearer, all attributes will increase by 4%. This rule cannot be bypassed. The rat counters the elephant. When the rat fights the elephant, all attributes increase by 60%, elephant attributes decrease by 60%. Nov. L. B //JNN. The lords must strive to defeat the enemy and obtain their chess piece. The chess piece of one faction cannot kill another of the same faction. They can still fight. The lord has to try to snatch away the other lord's chess piece. With every chess piece won, the lord will have command over the other person's troop. Note, the troop type will be automatically converted to the faction of the lord who wins the fight. The lord who obtains all the chess pieces wins the fight. After the system notification appeared, a gray light flashed. Yuan and Yuan found themselves at the edge of a floating island. Chapter 373, The Appearance of the Gods. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The island was about 500 meters in diameter. The terrain was uneven, and there were many caves underground. Yuan saw thick black clouds floating over the island. The huge clouds seemed to contain some kind of terrifying beast. 100 meters away from the island they were on, they could see another 4 islands suspended in the air. The rock walls were engraved with words, lion, tiger, dog. Yuan looked at the islands. If he was right, the system had assigned Yuan to be the mouse. The rules of the dungeon were quite interesting. The 5 chess pieces needed to clash with each other. There was no advantage given to any of them. But where were Yuan's troops? The system assigned them their own troops. Since Yuan was categorized as the weakest of them all, she should have been given troops too. Do I have to fight this time? Wondered Yuan. Yuan didn't want to reveal his strength in front of the gods. A hole appeared in the center. Numerous skeleton soldiers crawled out of the ground. The skeletons weren't that of human beings. They looked more like huge rats. When the skeletons climbed out of the ground, the notification sounded again. You have command over the ratfolk skeleton troop. Total number of ratfolk skeletons, 1,600. Level 35. All attributes increase by 10% if the ratfolks fight on the sand. If there are more than 20 skeletons, strength increases by 10%. If their numbers are more than 50, strength increases by 15%. If the number exceeds 100, strength increases by 20%. Note, weak in combat. Only the poorest desert lords will use these creatures. Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The soldiers were just too weak. Although there were 1,600 of them, their combat prowess was worthless. Yuan wondered how strong the other troops were. She opened the attribute panel of the dungeon. Dark faction, chess pieces, 5. Level 44 elephantman skeletons, 100. Chess pieces occupied, none. Level 10 holy lion skeletons, 200. Chess pieces occupied, none. Level 9 tigerman skeletons, 400. Chess pieces occupied, none. Level 7 light god skeleton, 800. Chess pieces occupied, none. Level 5 ratfolk skeletons, 1,600. Chess pieces occupied, none. Although the other troops were fewer, they could easily beat up Yuan's 1,600 ratfolk skeletons. Yuan looked at her skeleton troops. Any adult human could trample them and kill them. She sighed. Messages appeared at the bottom of the interface. Duke, what are you? Knightley, I'm a lion. Lilao-san, I am a tiger. Hyena, I am an elephant. It's simply awesome. This unit is so strong. It's 5 meters tall when it stands up. I feel like I can fight 10 other lords. Lord Yuan is a rat. The news silenced the others. The highest ranking lord was assigned the weakest of roles. The hyena's excitement disappeared. The hyena, Lord Yuan, how should we play? I don't know if I can deal with the elephants of other factions. The same faction didn't compete with each other. The ultimate victory was in the pursuit and defeat of the other factions. Knightley, Lord Yuan, if the roles can be changed, I can be the rat, and you can switch to a lion. The hyena, yes. You can switch with me too. I can be a rat. You can be an elephant. The lords knew Yuan was their biggest asset. It didn't matter which powerful role they had been assigned. They couldn't win without Yuan's help. Yuan smiled and replied. Yuan, that's all right. We can play like this. It's fine. She had Yuan, after all. With his help, the ratfolk skeletons might turn out to be the strongest. Yuan nodded to Yuan, and he activated the demonic dragon's blessing on the troop. A new ability was unlocked. Dark Barrier, reduces 99% physical damage and 30% magical damage. Able to devour darkness to heal injuries. Lasts for 15 minutes. Cooldown, 2 hours. When commanding the undead army, all attributes of the army will be increased by 50%. 3 squads of undead soldiers can be revived every day. The ratfolk skeletons felt a power surge within their bodies. They opened their mouths and bared their fangs. Yuan smiled in delight. With Yuan's help, this fight was a piece of cake. The dogs that were originally a threat to the rats were no longer a threat after the rats were strengthened. The rats had the upper hand when it came to the elephants, so that was taken care of. The rats were no longer scared. The earth rumbled. From the center of the island rose a huge rat. The fight finally began. Lords, protect your chess pieces. If your chess piece is snatched by the enemy, your island will be occupied. The condition for victory was to destroy the opponent's chess pieces. The hyena, Lord Yuan, who will go first? Let's do it in order, said Yuan. There were 5 chess pieces. Every chess piece needed to be snatched away from the enemy while protecting their own. It didn't matter who went first. When the other faction heard that they would be fighting the dark faction, their eyes lit up. The light faction was superior to the dark faction, especially since this dungeon was overseen by the gods. The match was confirmed. The battle began. 10 huge phantom thrones appeared. They were the gods. The system informed them that the gods were watching the battle. Nov. L. B /JNN. Su Yuan stood beside Yuan and raised his head to look at the terrible faces of the gods that were clearly visible. The power of the gods was beyond anyone's imagination. However, Su Yuan looked at them in disdain. The dark demon dragon would never bow to the gods? Chapter 374, Ridiculous. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The floating island veered in a direction. The islands labeled lion flew over toward each other. The lions from the two factions were already fighting. The lord who had obtained a chess piece saw Yuan's ratfolk skeletons flying to them. The lord was excited. Bah, it's just rats I'm facing. We're going to win this round. The enemy Shi Wei feared the most was the elephant. Rats were of no consequence to him. He was a lion, after all. He didn't have to fear rats. There was a violent collision. Two floating islands connected with a force that shook the earth. The lord who had received a lion chess piece looked at the half-dead ratfolk skeletons and laughed. Kill them, he ordered his holy lion knights as he stepped onto the enemy's island. His lions were majestic, and the rats looked pathetic. The lord raised his hand. May the holy light guide you? Attack. All the holy light lion knights emitted white light and rushed toward the ratfolk skeletons. The ratfolk skeletons didn't even have time to dodge. The holy light enveloped them. The light did nothing to the ratfolk skeletons. It was like a nice breeze blowing on their faces. The lords from the light faction were in disbelief. How was this possible? The holy light always disintegrated the dark faction. How had the opponent gotten immune to that? This was the first time the holy light had failed. The mystic dragon's favor could grant immunity to the light and nature factions, and deal damage to the dark faction. The blurry shadow in the sky loomed over them. Su Yuan raised his head to look at it. The energy it released was so great that it suppressed everything. Su Yuan felt as though there was a huge weight on her chest that was making it difficult for her to breathe. Su Yuan moved near Su Yuan and helped her resist the oppressive aura. The gods were hostile to them. It was no wonder the dark faction always lost these fights because the gods themselves were biased. Who is that shadow? Wondered Su Yuan. He got his answer in an instant. God of Light, n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Only his enemy would show hostility in an area where the fight was supposed to be fair. He had defeated the God of Light once before. Su Yuan's eyes narrowed in disdain. He then smirked. I hope you remember what happened to you forever. The God of Light was so angry that he wanted to descend into the battle and fight Su Yuan, but the other 9 gods stopped him. The God of Light had no choice but to calm himself. Su Yuan also retracted his aura. He turned to observe the fight between the lions and the rats. Charge, said the Lord. I want them dead. He didn't care if they were immune to the holy light. He would use brute strength if he needed to. However, just as he gave the order, he noticed a dark light rising behind the ratfolk skeletons. The ground of the floating island turned into a swamp. The lions slowed. They couldn't move properly. The swamp made it hard to run for the lions while it condensed and gathered around the rats. When the swamp had condensed around the rats and the ground became hard once again, the lions charged at the rats and clashed with them with force. The Holy Light Lion Knights thought that the ratfolk skeletons would be crushed by their strength. However, it was like hitting a boulder. It made no difference. They hadn't even managed to injure the cats. The Lord felt humiliated. He ordered the lions to charge once again. His sword slashed and hacked at the surrounding rats. A few rats bore the brunt of his rage and were sent flying. However, they healed at an extraordinary speed. The rats were unstoppable. The swamp was helping them recover. The lions were shocked and furious. They wanted to charge forward, but the rats didn't give them a chance. The rats swarmed at them like a tide. It was time for the lions to fear the rats. The rats' combat power had increased so dramatically that they fought head-on with the lions. The Lord's sword slashed relentlessly as he cut the rats away. The shield of the ratfolk skeletons finally broke under the endless attack. However, the rats didn't care. They kept attacking the lions and bringing them down. They climbed up on the lions and bit them. The enemy troop was flustered. The rats used this opening to attack even more fiercely. The Lord, who had been so confident that his lions could win against the rats, watched helplessly as 200 of his lions were drowned under the numerous rats. How is this Lord so strong? He was a lion. He was second to only the elephants? How could rats defeat lions? That was ridiculous. However, it didn't matter what he felt. The truth was in front of his eyes. His troop was gone. It looked like the rats weren't ordinary rats. They were devils in rat skin. His lions were just harmless toys for them? Chapter 375, Simply Unbelievable. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. When numerous ratfolk skeletons rushed to the floating island of the lion, the Lord of the Light faction sighed in defeat. He sent a message to his other teammates. My lions were defeated by rats. Beware, the rats are poisonous and fierce. The ratfolk skeletons swarmed to the lion island and destroyed the huge statue of a lion floating in the middle of the island. All the lords heard the system notification. The dark faction rat has occupied the light faction's lion. Dark faction's rat is rewarded 100 rotten lion cavalry. Dark faction has taken the opponent's chess piece. 10 points are awarded to Lord Yuan. Additional 20 points for defeating all the lions. The lords were speechless. They sent messages on the interface. Are they kidding? How could a lion be defeated by a rat? What a joke. The light faction was so useless that their lions couldn't even defeat the rats? 200 lions against 1600 rats shouldn't have been that much of a problem. No one could understand how the rats were able to defeat the lions. This beast battle chess was something indeed. It completely overturned the natural order of things. F***ck, I'm going to skin the dark faction alive, n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. What should we do next? On the contrary, the dark faction was ecstatic. As expected of Lord Yuan. She's really something. A rat defeating a lion? No one might have heard of such a thing, but Lord Yuan made it happen. They had thought that their situation would be dire because Yuan was assigned the rat. Yuan had turned the tides for the fight. Their weakest force was the strongest. More importantly, she was awarded a 2 rotten lion cavalry. The powerful rat was almost invincible, and they had gotten an additional troop type. The opponent's island labeled lion sank with a boom. Yuan's island grew from 500 meters to 600 meters in diameter. At the same time, holy light descended from the sky. The 100 rotten lion cavalry climbed out of the corpses of the lions and joined Yuan. Yuan hoped she would get a chance to use the sword that Beiyan had given her. However, she didn't mind getting 100 rotten lion cavalry. It increased her strength. With Su Yuan's ability, the rats could even fight an elephant if need be. Yuan was glad that she had obtained points. Earning more points was always beneficial. The more points, the better it would be to defeat the enemies. The God of Light's aura fluctuated. The terrifying divine might spread out again as though the God of Light could no longer tolerate this. Su Yuan looked up at the sky indifferently. It didn't matter whether they tried to offend or please the God of Light. They were far beyond that. They were at a point where only one of them could live. The God of Light had already tried to destroy Yuan's territory and lost. It was a natural thing for him to want to kill them here in this dungeon. The rules of the dungeon had powerful restrictions. The gods couldn't just attack them out of the blue. Su Yuan watched the other troops fighting. If the God of Light wanted to attack them, they would have to wait until they were all out of the dungeon. If the crimson moon is rising, they should target the God of Light first. Su Yuan watched the hyena. The hyena was lucky indeed. He took the opening and attacked the dog island of the other faction. The dungeon was indeed interesting. They divided the factions into 2 and gave them the same troop types. For example, the lions of one faction weren't stronger than the lions of the other faction. The only difference was the lords. The victory and defeat of the troops would depend on the strategy and strength of the lord commanding them. The hyena had no attributes or buffs that he could apply to his troops, but his troop was strong enough to bring down the hounds anyway. 20 minutes later, the first round of battle between the 2 factions ended. In the end, there were only 3 groups left on the dark faction's side: the elephant, the lion, and the rat. The tiger and the dog had been defeated. The opponents were left with the elephant, the tiger, and the rat. If the rats of the dark faction could defeat a lion, they could defeat the tiger easily. As for the elephant, it was already at a disadvantage when facing the rats. The lords of the opposing faction were speechless. They were at a massive disadvantage. The first round has ended. Please prepare for the next round. The hyena smiled and rejoiced. Lord Yuan was indeed amazing. If the rat hadn't defeated the lion, the fight would have been difficult for them. After making the arrangements, the second round began. A whistle sounded in the air. Yuan looked at the rapidly approaching elephant and smiled. The opponent's elephant category wanted to cry. How could a rat defeat a lion? The 2 islands collided and connected, and the fight began. You have encountered a chess piece, the elephant. The strength of the rat troops has been increased by 60%. The attributes of the elephant troops have been reduced by 60%. Yuan smiled in delight. The lord, who commanded the elephant troop, watched helplessly as he felt his troops' attributes reduced drastically. I don't believe that rats can win against an elephant. The lord gritted his teeth. The holy light elephantmen charged forward. However, they were too slow. Chapter 376, The God of Light's Fury. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The rat folk skeletons were very agile. They charged into battle. The holy light elephantmen wielded heavy war hammers that could shatter boulders. However, their speed was too slow. Whenever they swung their hammers, they only hit air because the rats got out of the way quickly. On the contrary, the rats jumped on the elephants and bit them with all their might. The holy light elephantmen fell one after the other. 10 minutes later, there were no more elephants left to fight. The lord, who was commanding the elephant troop, watched as his troop was defeated mercilessly. His arrogance and confidence from before were completely crushed. He let out a long sigh and accepted defeat. The hyena's elephant troops also won against the opponent's tiger. The second round has ended. You have obtained 10 points and 50 rotten elephantmen. Dark faction is left with an elephant, lion, and rat. The light faction's chess pieces are all destroyed. Since the dark faction is entering the second round, all fallen lords will be resurrected. All lords have been awarded 10 points. Dungeon rankings. First place, Yuan, Dark Faction's Rat 60. Second place, the Hyena, Dark Faction's Elephant 40. Third place, Li Si, Light Faction's Elephant 40. When the notification sounded, the other lords were resurrected from Yuan's team. The lords were overjoyed to find that they had won. The hyena, Lord Yuan, you're awesome. Knightly, Lord Yuan, do you need underlings to do your bidding? I can do it. Duke, you are so shameless. We met Yuan first. Yuan looked at the messages in amusement but paid them no mind. She waited for the second round to start. The lords from the light faction were in an uproar. What the F***? So, that's Yuan. What sin did I ever commit in my past life that I had to encounter Yuan here? Everything made sense. They were wondering how the dark faction was able to win so easily. It was because of Yuan. I was wondering how the rat was able to defeat the lion. Yuan is the rat, right? If she ended up killing the gods, it wouldn't be unbelievable at this point. The second round of battle began. The dark faction versus the light faction. Please prepare for battle. Yuan looked at the sky. As expected, the aura of the god of light shifted. He could feel the god of light's fury. If not for the dungeon's rules, the god of light would have already attacked them. The other lords felt it too. The hyena, Lord Yuan, why do I feel like that god hates us? Does the god favor the light faction? Duke, the god is so heartless. We defeated the light faction. It's just a competition. Why is he getting hostile? Li Lao-san, I also feel that the god is very offended. Lord Yuan, what do you think? N/O/vel/b/in.c//om. Yuan, that's the god of light. The hyena, the god of light? Lord Yuan, what does he want with you? Yuan, we had a disagreement in the past. He holds a grudge against us. The hyena, ha ha ha, nice joke. How could a god hold a grudge against a lord? Duke, I didn't expect you to have such a good sense of humor. Yuan didn't know how to tell them that it wasn't a joke. For ordinary lords, the gods were indeed mighty. Someone they couldn't even touch. Moreover, if any ordinary lord offended a god, they wouldn't be alive for long. However, Yuan survived because of Yuan. The second round of battle began. Yuan didn't have much time to think further about it. The god island floated towards Yuan's island. The attributes of the dog troops increased by 40%. However, when they saw that they were facing Yuan's rats, their faces paled. The rats had defeated the lions and the elephants. The lord commanding the dogs didn't have much faith. With a loud bang, the two floating islands collided. The rat folk skeletons, the rotten lion cavalry, and the rotten elephant men charged. The lord of the light faction trembled in fear. The lord was defeated in an instant. The lord had tried his best to withstand the attack, but the opponent was too strong. His troop was annihilated. The shadow in the sky seemed to become even more furious. The divine might was too overwhelming. Yuan stood in front of Yuan to shield her. He walked to the island in front. A huge warhammer materialized in his hands, and he swung it at the huge dog statue in the center. Yuan smirked at the god in the sky. The god of light seemed furious. Lowly dark demon dragon, you're really asking for death. The divine language radiated contempt and rage. The lords were shocked. The god had actually spoken? The lords wondered if the dark demon dragon was Yuan's initial hero. They were curious about him. Why would a hero offend a god? Yuan raised his head to the sky. The corners of his lips curled up into a smile. God of light, why couldn't you just stay in your paradise and waste your time away? Why did you have to come here to provoke me? Said Yuan indifferently. Chapter 377, How dare he curse at a mighty god? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. All the lords were wide-eyed in shock. They held their breaths. The lords looked at the handsome man in fear. How dare he curse at a mighty god? Everyone trembled in fear. They even felt as though they had imagined everything. They knew that Yuan was the strongest lord. Granted that she was ranked first, she couldn't just challenge a god. It was true that the rules in the dungeon protected the lord from the gods. But what would happen after they left the dungeon? Nobody could protect them outside. The gods might want their revenge. The lords felt suffocated even thinking about it. The other lords just watched in fear and admiration. Lord Yuan was indeed something. Her initial hero was no less admirable. The light faction was shocked and scared, but they were also secretly glad. The dark faction was done for. It was not a simple matter to offend the gods. They wanted to see Yuan fall, more than anything else. The hyena, Knightly, and the two other lords in Yuan's team were baffled. When Yuan had mentioned that she didn't get along with the god of light, they thought it was just a joke. Nov, L, B /JNN. They didn't believe her before, but now it seemed like Yuan was speaking the truth. If not, Yuan would have never challenged a god like that. They realized that Lord Yuan wasn't just an ordinary lord. She was indeed powerful and fierce and worthy of being number one. She had offended the gods and was still alive. If it was any of them, they would have already died. Her initial hero was pointing at the gods and cursing at them. The other lords couldn't even imagine doing something like that. The other gods also looked shocked. Everyone had their eyes on Yuan. Nobody had thought that a hero would dare to humiliate the gods. Rage exuded from the god of light like a wave. The intense energy fluctuations made everyone wonder if the sky itself would collapse. I will imprison your soul and make you live in eternal agony, said the god of light furiously. Yuan waved his hand. The warhammer in his hands disappeared and was replaced by a statue of the god of light. He smashed the statue on the ground and broke it. The gesture was equivalent to declaring war against the god of light. The god of light could no longer control his anger. The aura radiating from the god was even more oppressive and suffocating than before. Cracks appeared in the sky of the dungeon. The god of light wanted to lash out. He made a move. The other gods wanted to stop him, but it was too late. The phantoms of the gods were created out of divine power and couldn't descend onto the dungeons in their real bodies. The god of light condensed his power so much that the others couldn't stop him. The sky shattered. The fragments rained down. A terrifying shadow descended at a rapid speed. The other lords trembled in fear. Were they all going to be wiped out? This was just a dungeon. Was there a need to cause such a big scene? The dungeon began to collapse. There were no longer any rules to protect them, and everyone was terrified. The other 9 phantoms dispersed like bubbles when the dungeon collapsed. They were the only ones who could have stopped the god of light, but they were gone. The lords knelt in fear. Even breathing was difficult amidst the suffocating aura radiated by the god of light. "Ant? You are nothing but an ant to me," said the god of light as he crushed all the chess pieces. The lords then realized that the dungeon was gone. A notification flashed. "Warning! The dungeon has been destroyed by a powerful entity. The exploration has ended. Please get out as fast as possible." The god of light rushed forward to Su Yuan. The hyena, Nightly, and the others cowered in fear. They saw the same horror reflected in each other's eyes. Facing the might of a god was impossible. They materialized out onto the grassy lawn of the manor. Bayan and Mestre, who happened to be humming a light song and passing by, saw the 4 lords. They wondered what had happened to them. They looked terrified. Mestre didn't see Suan and Su Yuan with them. What happened? Where is Lord Suan? The god of light. Lord Suan and Su Yuan are still in the dungeon. The god of light attacked us, said the hyena. Bayan's eyes narrowed. The god of light. Tell me everything. Now, said Bayan. The hyena stammered and tried to explain the situation as best as he could. Lord Suan said she had a grudge against the god of light. We thought she was just joking, but the hyena looked conflicted. The god of light kept provoking us. Then, Lord Suwan's hero yelled at the god in front of everyone. And then, asked Bayan. Nightly chimed in. In the end, the god of light was enraged. He destroyed the dungeon and its rules and rushed to attack Lord Suwan's hero. Lord Suwan is still inside, but you don't have to worry. If she dies inside, she'll be resurrected outside. Bayan looked excited. Su Yuan yelled at a god. Was Su Yuan that strong? Chapter 378, Imprisonment. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Boom! The rules of the dungeon shattered with it. The chaos tore apart the surroundings. The destruction of the instant dungeon couldn't be undone, even if the god of light was punished. Su Yuan glanced at Suwan. He had to get her out somehow. Su Yuan held the dimension stone of the dungeon in his hands. The function of the dimension stone was to stabilize the dimension and support the natural order. Su Yuan looked at the dimension stone and frowned. Nothing happened. Wasn't this how the dimension stone was used? Su Yuan injected his magic into the dimension stone reluctantly. There was still no change. He then injected all of his dark magic into the dimension stone. There was finally a change. The dimension stone emitted a dark light that spread in all directions. Wherever the light touched, the space stabilized. The collapse stopped. Su Yuan was delighted. He continued to inject even more power into the dimension stone. The light shone brighter and it stabilized everything. The dungeon was no longer falling. Su Yuan looked excited. Outside the range of the dark light, there was an unfathomable area. The void was a place of eternal ending without the protection of any law. The endless river bank seemed to hide a huge beast that could devour everything. They were like children with only one lantern that could illuminate only a small part of the world. The floating island below them had already shattered. Those fragments flew in the air as though they were unaffected by gravity. None of the troops and chess pieces survived. In this place without rules, Suwan and Su Yuan were the only living beings. There was only silence. Su Yuan, are we going to die here? Asked Suwan in a small voice. Su Yuan took a deep breath. He held the dimension stone tightly and suddenly had an idea. He wondered if he could create a new dimension here by placing the stone somewhere. Su Yuan was excited. The plan was ridiculous but possible. It didn't matter what plane he created here. It could always grow into something else. That was what he had learned from the old man without a heart. Su Yuan increased the power he injected into the dimension stone. Under his control, the power of the dimension stone began to gradually repair the surroundings. Su Yuan could sense the space repairing itself into something new. He was even more eager to see the outcome. He didn't know how much time had passed. The collapsed place had been repaired. Su Yuan now felt a close connection with the dimension stone in his hands. He could even borrow its power to control this space. He took a deep breath and stopped channeling his power into the dimension stone. Su Yuan turned around to look. The emotions he felt were indescribable. Suwan and he had their own plane now. There was a crisp sound of glass breaking. Su Yuan felt that something was wrong. He turned to look where the sound had come from. The space that had just been repaired began to crack again. Before he could do anything, the cracks spread like a web and covered the entire space. Nov. L. B /JNN. Su Yuan gripped the dimension stone and injected more power into it. The dark light surged again, and the cracks disappeared. However, moments later, everything exploded. The repaired space collapsed. In a few seconds, the surrounding space had already been swallowed by the void, leaving only Su Yuan and Suwan in the vast space. The dimension stone barely supported them this time. Su Yuan was confused. He had thought that it would work. However, a plane that had shattered into so many fragments was impossible to put back. Su Yuan took a deep breath and calmed himself. He frowned. It wasn't easy to control a plane. If it was, everyone would have won for themselves. After the space was repaired by the Dimension Stone, the overall spatial power became very weak. The spatial barrier could no longer isolate itself from the erosion of the void, which was the main cause of the collapse. The rules of a special faction dungeon were not perfect. It was even more difficult to support an incomplete plane. His current power was not enough to fully utilize the Dimension Stone. Therefore, his attempts ended in failure. Su Yuan sighed. He had failed, but he now knew how to use the Dimension Stone. He looked at the endless void in front of him and decided not to linger there anymore. He controlled the Dimension Stone and used the remaining power to open an exit. Chapter 379, Collapse and Return. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Su Yuan pulled the dazed Suan out of the space. The moment they got out, the dungeon collapsed completely. In Lavender Manor, Beiyan had been waiting for them for hours. She was anxious. "Are you sure the Lord can be resurrected outside the dungeon?" asked Beiyan again. The lords nodded. "We were killed when the God of Light rushed down from his throne. We materialized here. Then why aren't they here yet?" Beiyan was impatient. Beiyan considered Suan and Su Yuan her family. She might be a princess and could decide the fate of Kanglan City at other times, but in front of Suan and Su Yuan, she was just a little girl. Beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. She was now worried. Nov. L. B /JNN. The lords had seen the God of Light rush down, bypassing the rule of the dungeon. Who knew what happened after that? "Your Highness, there's no need to worry. Gods can't harm the lords in the dungeons," said Mestre to comfort her. Beiyan nodded. She raised her head to the sky. No one knew what was in her mind. After a long while, the space in front of Beiyan rippled like water. A handsome figure materialized. He was pulling someone behind him. The two of them landed on the grass. The lords almost cried. They were happy to see that Suan and Su Yuan were all right. If they hadn't come on time, Beiyan might have skinned them alive. The lords didn't know how Suan had won the friendship of the princess of Kanglan City. Beiyan smiled in relief when she saw Su Yuan and Suan appear. "Lord Su Yuan, you're back." Beiyan ran to Suan and hugged both of them. What happened? The other lords wanted to know as well. They shouldn't have been gone for so long. Were you locked up and tortured by the gods, Lord Suan? Asked the hyena. "It must not have been easy for them to escape," said the bald knightly. Su Yuan ignored them. "So many questions." He reached out and patted Beiyan on the head. "I was so worried about both of you." "You've been gone for hours," said Beiyan and glared at Su Yuan. She looked like she was about to cry. Su Yuan laughed and consoled her. "You haven't told me what happened," said Beiyan impatiently. Her beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity. She wanted to know if Su Yuan had actually cursed at a god. The thrill of danger and adventure made Beiyan excited. Su Yuan let Suan do the explaining. "The God of Light always had a grudge against my territory." Su Yuan chuckled when Beiyan looked even more excited. "A few months ago, he almost flattened our territory." "Yeah," said Su Yuan. "We are mortal enemies. Is it a big deal if I curse at him?" Beiyan was curious. The territory was fairly new. How had it withstood the might of a god? "What happened after that?" Beiyan asked. "The God of Light's avatar appeared in the sky. Su Yuan defeated him. That is why he hates us so much," said Suan. Beiyan was perplexed. Gods were considered beings of extraordinary might. They had absolute dominion over everything. It wasn't just Beiyan. Most of the natives had unconditional respect for the gods. "Then what happened when you met him today in the dungeon?" asked Beiyan. Lord Su Yuan defeated his manifestation yet again. "Not really." Suan shook her head. Beiyan's face stiffened. Then she let out a sigh. It seemed even the strongest being couldn't match the gods in a fight. "Su Yuan imprisoned him this time," said Suan. Beiyan felt her blood rush to her head. Imprisoning a god wasn't something she thought was even possible. She felt dizzy. The God of Light was one of the strongest gods, and the dark demon dragon had managed to imprison him? The other lords were as shocked as Beiyan. They had seen, felt, and suffered from the god's oppressive aura. With a wave of the god's hand, the dungeon had shattered. The terror they had felt wasn't something that could be described in mere words. Chapter 380, New Mission. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Suan causally told them that such a mighty and tyrannical god was imprisoned by her initial hero. The lords didn't know what to feel. They all had been assigned initial heroes. How was Suan's hero this strong? When they all returned to the living room, Beiyan was still in a daze. She glanced at Su Yuan. The news shocked everyone. Even if it was just a manifestation that had been imprisoned, it held the god's power and might. It wasn't something anyone could manage. "Lord Suan," Beiyan turned to her with eager eyes. "See, can I have a look at the imprisoned god?" The lords were curious too. Who wouldn't like to see an imprisoned god? It wasn't something they got to see every day. "If I take it out and show you, it might cause problems. We can't be careless with it." Beiyan nodded. She understood. Obviously, a treasure with an imprisoned god couldn't be displayed casually. "Then you must take good care of it. Gods must not be underestimated," said Beiyan. "We are already far beyond any chance of reconciliation with the God of Light. I heard about the Crimson Moon. We need to find them so that we can hunt down the god of light, once and for all, said Yuan. The other lords were shocked to hear that. They were in awe of Yuan. She not only imprisoned a god but also was looking for the Crimson Moon to destroy him completely. Beiyan had influence in Kanglan City. If anyone could find anything about the Crimson Moon, it would be her. The crazy idea of slaying a god made Beiyan's heart tremble. I'll help you, said Beiyan. It was irresistible for her to be involved in such a dangerous thing. She had always been rebellious. She loved adventure, but she was still scared. Silly girl, you don't have to look so worried, said Su Yuan. I won't let anything happen to you. Yuan's territory didn't have influence outside, so it was difficult to find out about Crimson Moon. I've never heard about the Crimson Moon before. How is it that they can threaten the gods? Asked Beiyan. I heard that there are special methods to deal with gods, but I don't know much about them. That is why we need your help to find them. I'll get someone to investigate it, but I also want to be involved in your follow-up plans, said Beiyan. You can participate if it's safe. Su Yuan smiled at her. Beiyan was happy. After talking to them a while, Beiyan left the manor to put someone on the trail to find the Crimson Moon. Lord Yuan, is there any other task you want us to do? Asked the hyena. The hyena was now even more determined to get onto Yuan's good side. I need you to help me gather some information, said Yuan. Of course. She put them to work to find out about the soul contract. I want any information you find on that. I never mistreat the people who work for me. If you do your job well, I'll reward you generously, said Yuan, and she meant it. We won't disappoint you. Can they be trusted? Asked Mestre after the lords left. The natives didn't like the lords. In their eyes, lords couldn't be trusted at all. I don't know. There aren't many people in this world who I can trust. Then why did you put them to work? There is nothing to lose. Even if they spread the information about it, it won't really affect me. Instead, I might just find the information I'm looking for. Nov. L. B /JNN. If she was in control, there was nothing to fear. Using the lords to find information wasn't really anything of consequence. If they did the job well, she would find what she was looking for. If not, she wouldn't lose anything anyway. Chapter 381, Target, Swamp Dragons. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Even if the news of a god's imprisonment spread far and wide, it wasn't like people would readily believe it. The natives would think that they were spouting nonsense. Mestre looked at Yuan. She didn't say anything more. Yuan probably knew what she was doing. Mestre, do you have any ideas on how to develop the Lavender Business Guild? Asked Yuan. I don't have enough information right now. The underground world hasn't gathered all the information I need yet. I need more time. Mestre shook her head. There's no rush. Take your time. Let's slowly build our foundation so that everything can operate smoothly. I'll leave 20 million rare resources as a startup fund. Yuan wanted to head back to her territory. She had been gone for so long. She needed to inquire about the Dimension Stones and the World Tree Seed. Furthermore, she wanted to study the withered branch that gave off a dark aura. Yuan had even encountered the glass mine occupied by dragons. She also had to explore the Divine Kingdom in the Shattered Lands. There was not enough time to do all that. Is the Crimson Moon that important? Asked Mestre. Yes. It's the most important thing right now, said Yuan. There would be drastic changes in the future, and Crimson Moon was the key to all of it. Please pay attention to any news regarding it, said Yuan. If time wasn't very short, we would first focus on establishing our information channels. Mestre was silent. Even with her ability, it was difficult to build connections in such a short time. She nodded. I'll do my best. The S-class mission Yuan had accepted was related to the soul contract as well. The world was changing, and Yuan needed to figure out how to fit in. The major problems we face now are both a challenge and an opportunity. You need to continue becoming stronger, said Su Yuan. The territory would definitely develop by leaps and bounds now. Yuan was optimistic. She nodded. She did need to get stronger. The future was never certain. She needed to get stronger to withstand the turbulent waves. No matter how many challenges they faced, it would be a stepping stone for them to develop more. Yuan's resolve was strong. Beiyan looked at Mestre angrily. They didn't even say goodbye to me. She had put so much effort into finding out about the Crimson Moon, and they hadn't even said goodbye. Lord Yuan and Lord Su Yuan are different from normal nobles. They don't care about complicated social etiquette, said Mestre. But Lord Su Yuan did say that he would bring a gift for you when he visits next time. A gift. Beiyan's anger disappeared. He definitely knows how to make me happy, said Beiyan. Inform me as soon as he returns. I'll settle the score with him myself. Mestre couldn't help but smile as she watched the girl leave. She finally understood why Su Yuan liked to tease her so much. Mestre left to look for the silver goblins and the feathermen to assign them their jobs. She had her work cut out for her. Yuan had specifically chosen her for this, and she intended to do well. Since the Lavender Business Guild would become their window to the outside world, the responsibility on her shoulders was even more important. No matter how difficult it was, she would never admit defeat. Mestre vowed to do well. She wouldn't disappoint her lord. She would make sure that the Lavender Business Guild became the most important chamber of commerce in Kanglan City. Yuan turned to look behind her. The enormous city was like a beast crouching on the ground. No matter how many times she looked at it, she felt awe. Yuan had a feeling that Kanglan City would be different in the future. After returning to her territory, she needed to raise everyone's level. Yuan opened the system map. There were 3 new points on the map now. The glass mine was located in the west. Tristana had warned them that there were too many dragons here. The dark demonic tree was in the north. She still had the withered branch from the tree in her bag somewhere. Consuming 100 points of divine power had restored life to the branch. This made Yuan sure of the fact that there might be even more treasures where the dark demonic tree stood. The temple was in the south, where Yuan needed to go and retrieve God's heart. Yuan looked at the point on the map which marked the glass mine. She had wanted to visit the dark demonic tree but decided to check out the glass mine first. During the breeding season, the dragons usually returned to the nest inside and didn't linger around outside. If they wasted that opportunity, who knew when they would get to explore the mines again? Nov. L. B /JNN. Yuan led her troops toward the glass mine. They flew for hours until they finally reached the crystal clear glass that covered the dunes. The glass scattered the reflected colors of the sun. It looked breathtaking. Chapter 382, The Hidden Swamp Dragon Hero. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan was in awe. It was no wonder the dragons flocked to this place. The place looked ethereal. Eliza floated up with her spear. Her aura surged, and the world paled in comparison. Yuan had given her the bloodthirsty armor. Eliza looked downright terrifying at that moment. There was a loud roar. The roar held so much power that ordinary creatures would have fled in fear. A terrifying creature rose into the air, flapping its giant wings. Its entire body was covered in grayish-black scales that even siege crossbows might not be able to pierce through. Razor-like bone spikes grew on its back, spanning from the back of its neck to its tail. The flaps of its wings raised dust and debris. Its limbs were muscular and enormous. A stomp from such claws could destroy walls. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Swamp Dragon. Level, 55. Potential, S-Class. The dragons were all either level 55 or 57. The aura and might of the dragons were so great that they made others feel suffocated. Dragons were at the top of the food chain in this world. Their combat power was beyond comprehension. If Yuan and her troops waited for the dragons to attack first, they would suffer heavy losses. Yuan looked at the dragons. She didn't command her troops to make a move. She just watched as the dragons warmed over to them. The swamp dragons were hostile toward the dark demon dragon. The undead made them feel humiliated. He immediately wanted to go around Eliza and attack them directly. The swamp dragons wanted to veer and avoid Eliza. Eliza's spear slashed through the air. The afterimages of the attack exploded. It was as though thousands of spear points attacked simultaneously. Whenever the spear points flashed, the swamp dragons were impaled and shredded. Blood splattered everywhere and stained the desert. The swamp dragons had ignored Eliza. They just wanted to rush straight to Yuan to attack. They now realized that Eliza wasn't someone to mess with. The remaining swamp dragons gathered and rushed to Eliza to attack her. One of the dragon's throats lit up with unreleased flames. The dragon's breath was so hot that it could even melt steel. It opened its mouth and shot flames at Eliza. The temperature of the flames was so high that it distorted the surrounding air. Eliza didn't even move back. She brandished her spear. Her spear slashed through the dragon's breath like it was nothing. The swamp dragons were stumped. Their dragon's breath was ineffective against this enemy? Eliza flew to the nearest dragon. The swamp dragon was terrified. For the first time, fear was reflected in its eyes. It dodged the attack, but it was too late. It felt a sharp pain in its chest as the spear impaled it, and then it lost consciousness. Eliza beheaded the dragon as it fell. The headless corpse crashed onto the sand and sent the dust flying everywhere. Eliza's fighting style was as domineering as ever. No opponent could withstand her might. The bloodthirsty armor provided Eliza with an endless stream of power. She used her spear as though it was the scythe of the Reaper. The fearless hero slaughtered the dragons. Yuan and Yuan watched as the hero killed one dragon after another. Yuan was impressed. Eliza wasn't even at level 50, and yet she slaughtered monsters way beyond her capabilities. Yuan wondered how formidable Eliza would be when she reached level 100. It was worth looking forward to. Even the vampire duke in the blood coffin might not compare to Eliza in combat. More than a third of the swamp dragons had been wiped out. At this moment, the situation changed. A fierce dragon might rose from behind. A giant dragon was approaching. It was the leader of the swamp dragons, the swamp dragon hero. Many lords were hiding behind a small sand dune some thousands of kilometers away. Yuan didn't notice them. F***ck? Who is that? She killed the swamp dragons so easily. This is so scary. Are we still going to complete the mission? The dragons, that warrior, they'll kill us easily. What are you afraid of? Half the swamp dragons have been killed already. This is our chance while the rest of the dragons are distracted. Just think. We'll be rich after this. This risk is worth it. Quickly now, we need to get into the glass mine before we're discovered. While the swamp dragons were distracted, the others crept into the glass mine. Neither the swamp dragons nor Yuan's troops noticed anything. The swamp dragon hero had yellow taints on its black scales. Its aura was terrifying. Eliza brandished her spear and slashed at it. She felt resistance. At the same time, the swamp dragon hero became more aggressive. When Yuan saw the giant dragon, she was intrigued. She wasn't afraid of it because she had Yuan by her side. Although the 9-headed Hydra and the red-eyed black dragon were very powerful, they were envious of the aura that the swamp dragon hero emanated. Even the white dragon saint was astonished. Hero units were difficult to recruit. They didn't have a soul contract to use on this dragon. Chapter 383, Fighting the Swamp Dragon Hero. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. While the battle raged on outside, the other lords had already made it into the glass mine. This is the place. 11. They stopped at the spot where there were many scattered glass fragments. Guild leader, what should we do? Set up the arrangements and take the treasures as quickly as possible. 11. The lords heard the sounds of battle from outside. They had a 3-star treasure map. The treasures they found inside would definitely be worth the risk. The lords were excited. They had obtained the treasure map more than a month before. However, they couldn't find a way to bypass the swamp dragons. They had tried their best. They hid among the dunes and waited for an opening to sneak in. The heavens didn't disappoint the ones who tried. Finally, the fight had distracted the swamp dragons. Now was their chance. He swiftly took out a vial of fresh blood from the system space. It was emitting intense mana fluctuations. Under the command of the leader, one of the lords poured blood in accordance with the rules on the map. Fresh blood bubbled as it hit the ground. The ground turned into a scarlet puddle. As more blood was poured in, a special pattern appeared on the ground. A magical power began to surge. When the last drop of blood fell, the dots suddenly erupted and radiated intense spiritual energy. Then, the dots connected together. It was as though a key had been turned into a lock. Boom! The ground shook and split open, sending black soil flying everywhere. The lords were scared. The commotion was so loud. They turned to look at the entrance to see if the people outside had heard the commotion. The rumbling of the ground stopped, and hidden stairs revealed themselves. Everyone has a resurrection scroll, so they can only lose 3 levels at most. Since this treasure is guarded by the swamp dragons, there must be something good hidden inside. 11. Fortunately, the people outside were still engaged in a fight with the swamp dragons. As long as they could obtain those treasures, everything would be worth it. The lords were prepared for this. They had waited a month. N/O/vel/b/in.c//om. They ran down the stairs without hesitation. Su Yuan had heard the commotion. He looked in the distance. He didn't notice anything unusual, but he saw a cloud of dust floating into the sky. Su Yuan frowned. He knew that something was wrong. The commotion had seemed strange. Did something happen inside the mine? 1. He needed to put an end to this fight. Su Yuan attacked. Dark energy surged everywhere. The power of darkness enveloped everything and made it difficult for the swamp dragons to move. The dark energy entirely condensed around their body, and they fell. Eliza seized the opportunity and brandished the long spear in her hand. Every slash would mean death. The swamp dragon hero wanted to swipe at Eliza. Eliza ignored it. The dragon's breath and the spear's slash collided in midair. Su Yuan didn't join this time. He just released his dark energy in waves. With his help, Eliza's attacks became fiercer. Eliza cleared out at least 2 squadrons of swamp dragons in a few minutes with Su Yuan's help. In the end, only the swamp dragon hero was left on the battlefield. This ferocious swamp dragon hero was enraged as it watched its underlings being slaughtered. It attacked Eliza. However, under the influence of dark energy, its attacks meant nothing. Eliza did not retreat. The dark energy surged even more and enveloped the swamp dragon hero. Eliza spun her spear and slashed. The swamp dragon hero sensed danger approaching. It couldn't even dodge. It fell from the sky. At this moment, several sharp earth spikes instantly condensed on the ground. The swamp dragon hero's body smashed down on the spikes. It suffered grave injuries on its abdomen. It struggled to break free. It sensed a sharp pain under one of its wings. Eliza had slashed its wings into pieces. The swamp dragon hero still didn't back down. It let out a terrifying dragon's breath. The desert turned into a lava puddle for a moment. The swamp dragon hero struggled but couldn't move. It could no longer endure the pain and roared piteously. Its body expanded, and its injury healed as though by magic. The swamp dragon hero's aura was even more ferocious than before. The swamp dragon hero's gaze swept through everything. Its gaze released a scries of attacks in every direction. Its wings were healed. It rose into the sky. Its target was no longer Eliza. This time, it veered straight toward Su Yuan. The swamp dragon hero had noticed that the power lay with Su Yuan. If it killed Su Yuan, nobody could restrain it. However, before it could fly halfway, something shifted. The swamp dragon hero turned around and saw the long spear slashing toward it. Its pupils widened in surprise. It flapped its wings but couldn't dodge in time. The spear hit it. The swamp dragon hero tumbled down the sky, bleeding profusely. It crashed onto the desert, sending dust flying everywhere. Eliza floated over it. I've waited for you a long time, one muttered Suwan. She wanted to capture the dragon alive. Chapter 384, Searching for Treasure. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. The swamp dragon hero could only grovel and struggle to survive. His life and death were at the mercy of the enemy. Suwan and Su Yuan stepped in front of the dragon. Su Yuan sensed its hatred when it looked at him. Seal its power, said Su Yuan. Eliza swung her long spear, slashing at a few fatal points. The dragon couldn't even move. Take it to the territory and hand it over to the dark withered tree. The red-eyed black dragon lifted the injured dragon into the air and flew towards Yuan's territory. Yuan recalled the commotion in the glass mine from before. He knew something was wrong inside. Yuan, along with Yuan and the others, flew toward the glass mine. A moment later, they found the blood pattern on the ground. The blood was fresh. Yuan frowned. Is this the work of some lord? He wondered who would risk their lives to get here. Was there something inside this mine that was valuable? There was a sudden movement from below. A few dusty lords were climbing up the crack. Hurry up. Those people won't be able to hold back the swamp dragons for long, said their leader. Guild leader, why did you stop? Let's go. The lords behind grumbled. Didn't you say the swamp dragons might be back? Shut up, said the leader. Only then did the lords realize that something was wrong. They saw Eliza looking at them icily. They trembled in fear. Eliza, let them out. Yes, my lord. Eliza moved aside and let the lords walk forward. They finally saw Yuan at the entrance. When the lords opened the interface to find out who she was, they gasped in shock. The leader cursed inwardly. You're at fault here, he said. Are you trying to take away our gains by intimidating us? Yuan was amused. They were not afraid of death. The resurrection scroll was something they had spent a lot of effort to obtain. We have already prepared for this for more than a month. We didn't expect you to come. We didn't mean to offend you, said the leader. What were you looking for? Asked Yuan. Nothing, the leader didn't want to tell her. Well, let's all go down and take a look then. Yuan didn't want to entertain their nonsense. Eliza let her spear drop near the crack. There was a small explosion. The leader found Yuan's name familiar. He had seen her somewhere before. We're actually here to find a treasure. That treasure is below. Guild leader. The other lords tried to stop him from revealing everything. Treasure. Yuan was curious. It seemed the swamp dragons weren't just attracted to the shiny glass. Did you find anything good inside? Asked Yuan. We couldn't go in. The door couldn't be opened. The area was blocked. The map showed them the location, but they couldn't break through. They did not have the key to open the door. The tall lord took out a tattered map and handed it to Yuan. Eve studied the map carefully. After confirming that it was safe, she informed Yuan. The other lords were envious. Golden Dragon's treasure map, incomplete. You can follow the treasure map to find the Golden Dragon's treasure. Note, a treasure map made by the Golden Dragon. However, it is incomplete. Some key information might be missing. The Golden Dragon was one of the top races among the Dragon clan. It was famous for its invincible body. The Golden Dragon's treasure map, Yuan was even more curious now to explore the place. Eliza was back from her exploration underground. There is a vast space down there. No enemies. There is a giant golden door in the center with a craving of a dragon. Eve, you keep an eye on them, said Yuan. She turned to the lords. Don't worry. When I come back up, I'll let you go. The lords still felt worried. In this world, lords killed each other and destroyed each other's territory. It was difficult for them to trust Yuan's words. Chapter 385, The Inheritance of the Golden Dragon. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan, Eliza, and Yuan made their way down the stairs. The lords stood where they were. Even watched them indifferently. The lords were scared to make any move. They didn't want to be killed. They secretly discussed Yuan in their group chat. The lords discussed at length but couldn't make out anything about Yuan's identity. Yuan concealed her aura and padded down the stairs. Her shoes made dull thuds on the damp stairs. The further they walked, the dimmer the lights became. Yuan had already extended his dark energy to envelop the entire space. He perceived everything in the surroundings. They soon felt the ground flatten under their shoes, which meant that the stairs had ended. They turned to look at the way they had come. Only a dot of light signaled the opening of the crack high above. The ground was covered with dried and decayed bones. The place looked like an ancient tomb. There were some footprints on the ground, which were obviously left behind by the previous lords. Yuan walked forward and stepped on a skeleton, which cracked with a crisp sound under his feet. He was calm. Scenes like these didn't bother him anymore. Eliza stood in the center and looked around vigilantly. There was a golden door in front of her. The light emitted by the golden door illuminated the surroundings faintly. The golden door was embossed with a ferocious and terrifying dragon. The dragon was so lifelike that it felt as though it would come alive any minute. Yuan even felt the dragon's might through the carving. The closer he got to the door, the stronger the aura became. When they were just a few meters away, the dragon's might became fiercer. It was as though the dragon had come to life and was glaring at them. Any ordinary person would have felt suffocated under such strong energy. It was no wonder the lords hadn't been able to open the door. They probably couldn't even get close. Yuan opened the system panel, but it showed her nothing aside from the name of the door. Golden Door. Yuan activated the true eye of the demonic dragon to find out more. Nov. L. B /JNN. The Golden Gate holds the dragon soul of a golden dragon. Devour its dragon soul and obtain the inheritance of the golden dragon. The current heir is the swamp dragon hero. Yuan's eyes lit up. Inheritance of the golden dragon? Good heavens. It was no wonder the swamp dragon hero had been so aggressive in fighting them. If no one found this place, the swamp dragon hero would have taken the inheritance and left. Yuan wondered what the inheritance was and how it could benefit her. Yuan recalled the hatred and contempt in the swamp dragon hero's eyes. Unless she had a soul contract, she could neither recruit the swamp dragon hero nor the vampire duke. Yuan wondered if the 9-headed hydra would become a dragon if his dragon blood was activated. Yuan walked nonchalantly and approached the door. He reached out and pressed his hand on it. Just as he was about to push the door open, a dragon's form appeared in his mind and roared. The terrifying power made everyone tremble in fear. This inheritance is guarded very fiercely, said Yuan as he pulled his hands away from the door. The dragon disappeared from his mind. The golden dragon and the dark demon dragon were polar opposites. So, the dragon was especially resistant to Yuan's attempts. Yuan found modeled murals behind the golden door. It recorded images of the golden dragon killing powerful enemies and ascending to the golden throne. She enjoyed looking at it. Based on the murals, the inheritance of the golden dragon was indeed something extraordinary. Yuan was excited. Eliza looked around. After confirming that there were no other treasures or threats, she suggested Yuan leave the place with Yuan. The lords heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Yuan and Yuan appear above ground again. Can you let us go now? Don't be so nervous. I won't hurt you, said Yuan. Do you know what exactly is hidden behind the golden door? We don't know. We couldn't even get close to the door. Did you find any treasures related to the golden dragon in there? No. We got a few treasures, but they weren't worth much. Yuan activated the true eye of the demon dragon to see if they were telling the truth. She didn't find anything unusual. Just wait a while longer. Once we get whatever is hidden inside, I'll let you go, said Yuan. She waved her hands, and the night devil bees flew outside to patrol the area. When the lords saw the night devil bees, they were horrified. They had seen Yuan fight before with those bees, and they weren't willing to risk it. The leader turned to look at his companions. That's definitely the Yuan we know, he whispered. Yeah, I recognize the night devil bees. Let's just obey her instructions and stay here. I don't think she's petty enough to go back on her words. The leader sighed and nodded. Yuan and Yuan ignored them. It was true that they wouldn't have even come across the golden door if it hadn't been for the lords. Half a day later, the red-eyed black dragon and the hydra arrived after dropping the swamp dragon hero in the territory. Can you turn these corpses into soldiers and convert them to our side? Asked Yuan. Eve nodded and chanted something to transform the corpses. Yuan and Yuan proceeded down the stairs along with the hydra. The most important thing right now was to obtain the golden dragon's inheritance. Chapter 386, The Hydra's Transformation. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The hydra sensed the dragon's aura the moment they neared the golden door. Lord Yuan, Your Majesty, I sense the dragon roaring at me from behind the door. It didn't accept you either. Yuan frowned. The hydra shook his head. I only feel anger and hostility from it n/o/vel/b//n.c//om. The golden dragon's soul had chosen the swamp dragon hero as its heir. It seemed it was unwilling to let anyone else close. Yuan was deep in thought. He was wondering how he could help the hydra obtain the inheritance without being destroyed by the golden dragon's might. Open the door. The inheritance is inside. I'll think of something, said Yuan. The hydra walked forward and pushed open the door. When the door opened, the golden dragon's deafening roar rang out. The dragon's aura rolled in waves and almost suffocated them. The hydra endured the pressure and stepped through the door. His soul fire grew stronger. The atmosphere became even more hostile. The might of the ferocious golden dragon pounced on the hydra. Even without a body, it was unimaginably powerful. The hydra roared and charged forward. The two collided. With Yuan's demonic dragon's blessing, the hydra was able to crush the might of the golden dragon. Without a body, the golden dragon found it hard to keep fighting. The dragon's soul was torn apart. It turned into specks of gold and dissipated. The light absorbed into the hydra's body. The energy was too overwhelming. The hydra felt the pain when so much power was trying to find room in his body. Yuan heard the hydra's pained whimper and released dark energy toward him. The dark energy was immediately devoured. The hydra's agony lessened. The hydra's aura surged. His dark soul fire glowed with a golden light. His body grew taller. There was the sound of bones cracking. The 9-headed snake was already terrifying in size and appearance. This new growth made him even more scary. As the hydra grew in size and aura, the golden door melted. The golden energy floated in the air before making a beeline for the hydra and it absorbed into him. The hydra's blood-red body was tainted with gold. As the melted energy flowed into him, the gold seeped into his skin, leaving no trace of it. His skin was blood-red once again. The hydra's blood-red body now glowed faintly golden. His aura was unmatched. Huge golden wings appeared on his back. Yuan had already spent 1/3 of the dark energy, but the hydra's transformation showed no signs of stopping. Yuan and Yuan were looking forward to the changes the hydra would undergo. Time passed. Finally, the hydra turned to Yuan. Your Majesty, I don't feel so well. The golden dragon's soul is too great. I need time to absorb it. The hydra fell to the ground. His soul fire dimmed. Yuan frowned. The hydra is exhausted, he said to Yuan. The inheritance is already absorbed. I think we should take the hydra back to the territory. Yuan used his magic to make the hydra float alongside him. Yuan and Yuan soon returned above ground. The lords were astonished when they returned. There was a 9-headed dragon with them. But why did the hydra glow like that? He is Lord Yuan's hero. But why is he glowing golden? Also, why does it look like a dragon and a snake at the same time? Maybe that was what the treasure was for. It's no wonder we couldn't open the door. The lords looked at the Hydra, who was unconscious. They were in awe. They also felt envious and regretful. Although they had found the treasure, they couldn't take it for themselves because they had no dragon. Let them go. Yuan waved her hands dismissively. The night devil bees dispersed from the air. Thank you, Lord Yuan. You are indeed trustworthy. You are so awesome. Long live Lord Yuan. The lords were happy that they were allowed to leave. They thanked Yuan profusely. Yuan didn't pay them any mind. Yuan noticed that there were even more night devil bees than usual. She opened their attribute panel. Recruited 300 night devil bees from the corpses of the swamp dragons. Initial. Level, 30. Potential, S-class. Total number of night devil bees, 4.60. Chapter 387, Another Large Yield. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan was satisfied with the recent addition. When she had killed over 1,000 wyverns raised by the beastmen, she had gotten only 70 night devil bees. Clearly, the swamp dragon's level and potential were both higher. This was completely beyond Yuan's expectations. She had gotten more than 300 night devil bees? The new night devil bees were of S-class potential? If she had used her resources to recruit them, she would have had to spend at least a few 100,000 of rare resources. The second reward of this encounter was the swamp dragon hero. At the moment, Yuan had no soul contract, so she couldn't tame the swamp dragon hero. However, with Yuan there, and the recent transformation of the Hydra, she was in no hurry to tame it. Maybe in the future, she might be able to obtain some reward by which she could tame the swamp dragon hero. Judging from the strength of the golden dragon's soul, the Hydra was going to transform drastically. Yuan was looking forward to the new and transformed Hydra. She was quite satisfied with what she obtained in this encounter. Everyone, said Yuan, prepare to return to the territory. She would send the red-eyed black dragon and the Hydra back first. After that, she might go and explore the place where the dark demonic tree was located. The sun was setting. Yuan and Yuan saw a dark area in the distance. They felt emotional. They were finally back home. As their bond with the territory grew deeper, their relationship with each other also grew stronger. It was a wonderful feeling. The troops sped up and crossed the swamp in no time. They all wanted to get back to the territory before dark. When the residents saw Yuan approaching, they became excited. My lord, you're back. Good evening, my lord. Welcome home, my lord. Yuan smiled radiantly. She nodded at everyone. She and Yuan made their way to the dark castle. They placed the Hydra in the backyard. The dark castle was guarded very strictly. Some guards were left around the Hydra to guard him. The troops were dismissed. They went off to the mess for some warm food and tea. Yuan turned back into his dragon form. Yuan was delighted to be back. Timo rushed over when he got the news that the Lord was back. Timo was getting old. The lines and wrinkles on his face were apparent. However, he looked far from old with a grin on his face. Lord Yuan, your majesty, you're back. Yuan smiled at him. The dwarf had definitely made too many contributions to the territory. Yuan wished she could do something for him. Unfortunately, at present, no treasure could restore one's youth or prolong one's life. Yuan was worried that he might suddenly fall sick one day. Sit down, Timo, said Yuan. You work too hard. You can hand over some of the work to your underlings and lighten your burdens. Lord Yuan, I enjoy working here. This territory has shown me the purpose of my life, said Timo with a chuckle. It is my honor. I can sacrifice my life and my soul for this city. Yuan was conflicted. She was grateful for his loyalty but was concerned for his health. Lord Yuan, I want to report to you on the matters of the territory, said Timo. Yuan nodded. Let's start from the underground world. Yes, my lord. Timo's voice turned serious. The plan to unify the underground world has been ongoing. However, the progress has been slow. It is estimated that it'll take 3 more months. The weapons factory project had been launched. The proposal for food and other surface items for weapons has spread far and wide in the underground. The intelligent races responded well to the proposal. Many factions contacted the Dark Region City to establish a cooperative relationship. It won't be long before there is a steady supply of weapons being produced. Also, the development of alchemy technology in the territory is progressing smoothly. At present, the work is led by a master alchemist and has entered the stage of full recovery. He is currently integrating the alchemy technology left behind by the dwarves. It was expected that the integration would be completed by the beginning of the month. By then, the level of alchemy technology would reach a new level. Also, many heroes have been recruited from the underground. Although most of them are of D, E, and even F rank, some are of B rank. There are some dwarves who claim to be from the bloodline of the gods. Yuan was intrigued. She had been planning to recruit heroes from the underground world but had never gotten around to doing it. The underground heroes were usually put off by the alchemy bombs. Yuan was especially curious about the goblins, who claimed to be from the bloodline of the gods. The goblins claim that their bloodline gives them immense power. However, they lost this power and the way to develop it after a war some 1,000 years back, said Timo. The goblins seek refuge here to solve their problem. Where are they now? n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. In the Furnace City under strict surveillance. I'll go and check it out later, said Yuan. Anything that involved the gods would not be a trivial matter. Timo continued with his report. In the territory, the one-armed blacksmith, Sam, has gained some new insight from his research on attack weapons. He is currently developing advanced attack technology. He says the results will be out in a few weeks. Yuan remembered the blacksmith. He was a determined man. She had been so impressed by his willpower and the need for self-improvement that she had used a strengthening crystal to grant him an A-class skill. He hadn't expected Sam to progress so fast. He was even developing a new attack technology. Yuan was proud of him for doing so. It seemed that nurturing talents was never a waste of effort. Chapter 388, Upgrading the Territory Core to Level 4. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Lord Yuan, the literacy rate of the territory has increased. Now, most of the residents know basic words and phrases and can read simple announcements on the notice boards. Next, we're planning to introduce more complex literature for them. The conferences in the territory had been adjusted for the public. The project for increasing literacy and encouraging reading among the residents was already in place. With the increase in the literacy rate, the project is speeding up. The first batch of books would be revised and distributed in 2 months. These books are all about experiences accumulated over a long period of time in the relevant fields, and there were also many exclusive secrets, which would be of great help to novice apprentices. In addition, the administrative department has been set up. It is currently divided into 5 departments: the Ministry of People, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Weapons, the Ministry of Industry, and the Ministry of Commerce. All the workers in the territory have been put under these ministries, depending on the type of work they do. The name list has been prepared. We are waiting for you to appoint the managers of these ministries, Lord Yuan. Timo described the ministries in great detail for Yuan's sake. Yuan listened very attentively to his report. She asked him directly if she had any doubts. Although she had left for only 15 days, the changes in the territory had been drastic. You did well, Timo, said Yuan. Please arrange a ceremony tomorrow. I'll appoint the relevant ministers for the ministries. As for the other government affairs, just carry them out according to the established plan. If you have any problem with it, report back to me. Mestre is now in charge of the Lavender Business Guild in Kanglan City. That is the new chamber of commerce of our territory. It is our window to the outside world. Whatever Mestre needs, please help her with it. Understood, my lord. Yuan trusted Timo. She knew he was responsible and meticulous in his work. All right. If there is nothing else, I am heading to the blacksmith. Timo nodded and left. Yuan finished her tea and went to meet Sam, the blacksmith. The guards at the door bowed to Yuan. All the troops were extremely loyal to the lord. The undead were even more loyal than the rest. As soon as she entered the smithy, the apprentices bowed to her. They were overjoyed to see Yuan. My lord, you're back. Yuan smiled at them. She then headed up to the second floor. Angel was at the forge, holding a long hammer that was almost as tall as herself. Angel turned around and saw Yuan standing at the door. My lord, you're back. She looked delighted. Your letter has been delivered. This is the reply. Yuan retrieved a letter from the system space and handed it to Angel. When Yuan announced that she was going to Kanglan City, Angel had given her a letter to deliver to her father. N/O/vel/b/jn.c//om. Yuan had given it to Zoro to be delivered at that time. Angel excitedly tore open the letter. My father tells me to do my best for the territory, my lord. That's great, said Yuan. Thank you for your effort. How is your research going? Yuan had obtained a strengthening crystal in one of her expeditions. It could be used to improve the skills of the troops. She had handed it to Angel to do her research. The young girl was absolutely passionate about researching weapons and the troops' potential. Lord Yuan, I got new inspiration from it. I'm trying out something regarding attack technology of the territory. Angel looked excited. My method could even strengthen the night devil bees beyond expectations. There's no need to go into so much detail. Just do it. I have absolute trust in you. If you need any resources, you can ask Timo. We aren't short on resources like before. You can go crazy with your research this time with full freedom, said Yuan. Angel grinned. Yuan knew that the girl was capable of so much, and she would support her unconditionally. When Angel threw herself back into her work, Yuan went to see the one-armed blacksmith, Sam. Sam had his own workshop. He looked very happy to see her. Yuan asked about the progress of the special attack technology that he was currently developing. She encouraged him further and told him not to worry about the lack of resources anymore. After leaving the smithy, Yuan checked the interface to confirm whether she had met all the requirements for upgrading the territory to level 4. She was nervous and excited. Territory core upgrade requirements. Land area, 10 square kilometers, achieved. Total amount of resources has reached 2,000 tons, achieved. Possess 20 buildings, achieved. A population of 20,000 people, achieved. Yuan was ecstatic to see that she could finally do it. Yuan could advance to level 100 now. She wasted no time and directly headed toward the Dark Caste. She began to prepare to upgrade the territory core. In Kanglan City, dozens of carriages entered through the gate. The pedestrians made way for the carriage in respect and reverence. The guards didn't stop the convoy. The Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce was of special status in Kanglan City. It was not only the largest merchant association in the city but also protected the city from all dangers. If not for the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce, Kanglan City wouldn't even exist. The president of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce sat in one of the carriages and looked out of the window. Her flawless face was serious. She looked regal. However, her elegance gave people the impression that this person was not someone to mess with. Chapter 389, At the Edge of the Advanced Territory. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. There are still a lot of good things left in the Red Dragon store, said Bardus. Those are yours, and the Crimson Moon is, of course, in your hands now. Bardus was half lying on the soft carriage scat. He looked at Nami with sympathy. Your father and I, we hoped you would grow to be happy and carefree like that little girl, Baiyan, said Bardus. But you were forced at an early age to take control of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. You had to work so hard to become the president, and even harder to get the people to respect your authority. And now, you have to look after the Crimson Moon, too much burden on such young shoulders. If only we could go back to the past and make everything alright, you could live the normal life of a normal girl. Nami turned to look at him. Teacher, one don't regret anything. It was my father's wish for me to be in charge of the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. I'm glad I didn't disappoint him, said Nami in a trembling voice. Bardus wished for her to take control of the Crimson Moon. Nami vowed that she wouldn't let him down. Bardus looked at her. He didn't think he could say anything to sway this stubborn child. Teacher, those false gods will eventually fall. They don't deserve to rule this world. Nami said firmly. I never doubted my faith, but I wish one didn't have to put such a burden on your shoulders. One wanted to see you live a happy life. Bardus sighed. Teacher, we still have time. One can issue a quest to all lords. There must be someone who can do it. I know just how capable those lords are. Bardus snorted in disdain. Lord Yuan is the only hope. After living without a heart for so long, Bardus was indifferent to life and death. If he wasn't worried about the Crimson Moon and Nami, he would have chosen death a long time ago. Nami frowned. Could Yuan really do it? Nami didn't have much confidence regarding that. Even if she can't, it's still better to rope her in, said Bardus. If the Crimson Moon is to rise, it must gain recognition from all. Yuan's involvement would be beneficial. Nami didn't say anything. The convoy entered the Qingyu Pavilion Chamber of Commerce. Sister Nami, you're here. As soon as they got out of the carriage, they saw someone waiting for them. One heard your carriages were entering the city, so I came here to wait for you, said Baiyan. Teacher Bardus, you're here too. Why aren't you so free? Where's the magic array research homework I gave you last month, said Bardus. Baiyan stammered something. Let's go in, said Nami as she ruffled Baiyan's hair. Mr. Bardus, let me help you, said Baiyan and stepped forward. Bardus ignored the little girl. A mechanical wheelchair materialized out of the carriage with Bardus on it. Baiyan looked flustered. Nami smiled. She felt a little better. The two of them walked behind Bardus. After a while, Baiyan could not help but blabber about everything that had happened in Kanglan City in Nami's absence. Baiyan talked at length about Yuan and Yuan. Although Baiyan pretended to be angry and indifferent while mentioning them, it was clear that she was fond of them. Nami laughed. The Lord and her dragon did have an undeniable charm. Tristana had given a manor to Yuan as a token of goodwill, and now Baiyan had become friends with them? One am good friends with Lord Yuan now, said Baiyan proudly. She even entrusted me to take care of her Chamber of Commerce in her absence. Nami didn't know what to say. She just laughed. Is she paying you to take care of her Chamber of Commerce? Sister Nami, you don't know what happened in your absence. Yuan and Yuan captured a god? The god of light has been imprisoned. Baiyan lowered her voice. Lord Yuan has asked for my help in finding some organization called the Crimson Moon. She said that the organization might know of a way to kill a god. Nami was stunned. Is she joking? Yuan stood in front of the dark castle and felt very happy. She had finally upgraded her territory to level Q. The territory had expanded a lot. The buildings looked a bit crowded. However, she could arrange them slowly. The city walls had expanded to make more space. City walls. Level, intermediate, can level up along with the territory. 10 million units of stone material required to level up. Characteristic, 25 meters tall, 12 meters wide. Skill, endurance. Increases the strength and defense of the army by 30%. Note, a city wall with good defense in place. Yuan checked the interface to SEC what was needed to upgrade the territory to level 5. Territory core upgrade requirements. Land area, 30 square kilometers, incomplete. Total resources have to reach 5,000 tons, not achieved. Possess 50 buildings and 10 technological buildings, incomplete. The population has to reach 100,000, not achieved. Nov. L. B //JNN. Yuan knew by now how difficult it was to upgrade the territory. The resources required for it was a secondary matter. The research itself took too long. Without it, creating technological buildings was impossible. 100,000 population. Yuan felt a headache coming. How could she ever increase her territory's population to that level? Chapter 390, Yuan can finally level up to 100. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yuan took a deep breath to calm herself. Yuan didn't think crossing the swamp and recruiting creatures and other people to live in the territory was feasible in the long term. She needed to bring in more people from outside. There were plenty of people displaced by war, who were looking for a home. Perhaps, in time, the Lavender Business Guild could find a way to send people to the territory. However, Yuan needed to set a limit if she wanted to do that. She needed to be able to house them as well. If she allowed everyone inside without proper planning, then there would be too many problems. Overpopulation could also affect the happiness of the present residents. The need for technological buildings was the greatest hurdle for now. Yuan thought about it long and hard and finally found a solution. These things couldn't be rushed, after all. She had to plan everything one step at a time. Yuan was mentally prepared for the challenges. She looked around her territory. The remaining buildings needed to be upgraded. Yuan upgraded the smithy, the food workshop, the brewery, the tailor shop, and the barracks. Apart from the barracks, all other places now were 4-storied. Only the barracks remained the same. The only difference was that the railings had turned into a 3-meter-high wall. The barracks were important to train ordinary residents if they wanted to become soldiers to defend the territory. However, the barracks added little value to the territory as a whole. Yuan didn't need ordinary residents to become soldiers. She had enough troops to defend and fight for the territory. She was glad that her territory was getting stronger. However, looking at the interface, it seemed that the current buildings in the territory were far from enough. Yuan upgraded the residential buildings and was now left with only a few million resources. The profits from the last expedition to the underground world were enough. She still had many resources that she could use. Under Yuan's generous spending, all the buildings in the territory were upgraded to a special grade. The territory core upgrade had given Yuan a new ability. Demon Dragon's Fury increases the user's strength by 10 times. There will be a short period of weakness after the cooldown n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. The latest ability sounded pretty powerful. Yuan was already so strong. If his strength increased by 10 times more, he would be indomitable. Yuan looked even more charming as a human. Yuan was wary. Yuan was already friendly with Tristana and Bayan. In the underground world, the old dwarf stood on the towering walls of Furnace City, looking into the grey distance with a solemn expression on his face. The dwarf was staring into the distance, where the Dark Region city was supposedly located. Once, his savior had appeared in that place. Yuan. Half a month passed after that, and Yuan hadn't appeared again. What are you doing up here again? D*MNU? If you fall down again, I swear I'll throw your corpse into the sewers and let those filthy saw-toothed rats devour it. The old dwarf turned around to face the voice. A grey dwarf approached him in a wheelchair. He looked angry. 2 mechanical puppets pushed the wheelchair from behind. Lord Owen, the old dwarf smiled bitterly. This person in front of him was the alchemist Owen, who first sought refuge in Yuan's territory. You fell from here last time. Why are you up there again? Lord Owen shouted. It was just an accident. I'm fine now, said the old dwarf. I swear that if His Majesty, Yuan, allows me to do it, I'll kick you down from there myself, shouted Lord Owen. Lord Owen, why were you looking for me? The old dwarf tried changing the topic. Lord Yuan and His Majesty Yuan returned to the territory 3 days ago. They specifically asked to see you, said Owen. Jax, I swear I'll throw you from there if it's all a lie. If you aren't from the bloodline of the gods, tell them now. Lord Yuan and His Majesty, Yuan, have returned? Praise the dwarf god. The old dwarf was eager to see them. The dwarf god fell long ago. What's the use of praising him now? Why don't you worship the great god of the grey dwarves instead? Asked Owen. Foolish grey dwarves and their facies? Our god hasn't fallen. He is just asleep. He will definitely return, said the old dwarf indignantly. That's just a legend, said Owen. Anyway, hurry. Don't be late. Lord Yuan wants to see you. Owen suddenly thought of something and sat up straight. Sir Jax, I have encountered a problem in alchemy and was wondering if you could help. Jax didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Owen's attitude toward him changed so fast depending on what he needed. Jax wasn't familiar with alchemy. However, there was a strange phenomenon that happened every time Owen asked him for solutions to alchemy problems. As long as Owen described the problem with clarity, Jax seemed to be able to find the solution. It was as though alchemy knowledge was hidden in Jax's mind. After Owen left, the old dwarf looked at the grey city walls. He then turned around and climbed down. Jax headed toward the inner part of Furnace City. The streets were bustling with mechanical puppets and grey dwarves. The war that destroyed Furnace City seemed to have been forgotten. No one even mentioned it anymore. Chapter 391, The Dwarf's Hope. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Survival was the #1 priority for people in the underground world. It didn't matter who ruled them, as long as they were allowed to live. The territory was free to manage the underground world, which allowed the underground world to develop to its full potential. No one paid Jax any attention as he walked through the streets. The old dwarf didn't mind. He was nervous and excited. He quickened his pace. After passing through 2 streets, he turned right toward a small manor. He ignored the mechanical puppets guarding the door, pushed open the door, and walked straight in. Patriarch 1. Lord Jax. The moment the door of the manor opened, everyone turned to look at him. The dwarves looked at him expectantly. In the past, the old dwarf had always felt a little ashamed when facing them. He knew what his people were waiting for, but he didn't have anything to give them. It was different this time. He took a deep breath. Lord Yuan has returned to the territory. She is visiting Furnace City in a few days. She asked to see us specifically. They finally had some hope. Praise the dwarf god. I know we would be recognized by the Lord. I hope the others who refused to join us regret this forever. The underground world always had respect for the strong. Everyone knew the legend about the dark demon dragon. The dwarves especially respected him. The old dwarf waited for the noise to die down. Everyone, go and rest. You have to rest and gather your strength. You must be ready when Lord Yuan visits. Point 1. Is it ready? One asked the old dwarf. Yes, but, if we hand that over, Woe won't have anything to offer for a way out, said a dwarf reluctantly. The only treasure left behind by their ancestors was the key to unlocking the power of their bloodline? The old dwarf was silent for a long time. Do we have another choice? Asked the old dwarf. Ever since the dwarf god had gone into eternal slumber, they had lost their power. They hadn't found anyone else who could activate the key until now. With their current situation, the dwarves couldn't gather enough resources to find a way to activate the key. Meanwhile, Dark Region City had already begun to annihilate other creatures of the underground world. They were next. They had no choice but to show their worth and try to survive. Why don't we join Dark Region City? Said one of the dwarves in defeat. Dark Region City? They are just pawns of Lord Yuan and His Majesty, Yuan, said Jax with contempt. Everyone knew who actually ruled the underground world. Only Lord Yuan can help us. We need to regain our strength. Jax sighed. Jax knew that Lord Yuan wasn't reckless and brutal. It was evident in the way she treated the underground world. Bring it out, n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. The two middle-aged dwarves looked at Jax. They didn't say anything further. Ever since their god fell asleep, they no longer had the power to decide their own fate. The two dwarves brandished a knife and slashed them across their palms. Blood spurted from the wound. The blood didn't drop on the ground. Instead, it floated up and met in the air. The two streams of blood fused and turned into a fist-sized dwarf statue. Before our god fell asleep, he predicted that we would return to the Crimson Moon once again. But now, that seems unbelievable. The old dwarf looked at the statue with tears streaming down his face. Yuan looked at her territory and felt good. She remembered what her territory used to look like. Now, it was a bustling city with residents, buildings, and horses. Her efforts were not in vain. The empty spaces would soon be filled, and her territory would be even more efficient. Yuan didn't forget about her Durkam. She would make this territory the most important and powerful place in the Overlord Plain. She walked to the northern city walls. Yuan realized that she hadn't visited the swamp for a few days now. Yuan flew toward the swamp. She approached the dark withered tree and noticed that its aura was different from before. Its branches had turned black. They used to be gray. The aura ebbed and flowed. It felt as though a dormant volcano was just waiting for a chance to erupt. Yuan opened the attribute panel. Dark withered tree. Boss unit. Level, 541. Status, transforming. The tree had already devoured a huge amount of dark energy and exceeded the limit of transformation. Yuan frowned. She didn't know if this was beneficial. My lord. A twisted face appeared on the huge trunk of the tree. Why haven't you completed your transformation yet? Yuan asked. She had already imbued it with the dark divine blood. The transformation will take a long while, but don't worry. I can still control my power. As the strongest force in the territory, it would be risky if the dark withered tree fell into a deep sleep. The dark withered tree was smart. Its level of intelligence was remarkable. However, that was always overlooked by people because of its combat power. Chapter 392, a territory gradually getting stronger. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Do I need to take out the items stored under your roots? Asked Yuan. The dark withered tree had a huge underground space, and all the magical plants plundered from the underground world had been transplanted there. The transformation will not affect the items stored below. What about that swamp dragon hero? I have already used my roots to bind its body. If its life force dwindles, I can inject mana through my roots to keep it alive. Yuan nodded. The dark withered tree was simply amazing. It could do anything. When I transform, please don't allow the residents to wander into the swamps, said the dark withered tree. It wouldn't be able to control the swamp at that time. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. Yuan nodded. Other than that, do you need anything else? Should I station some troops around you to guard you from harm? Not really. If there is any danger I can't face, I'll sink into the quicksand. You can then send help. Yuan took out the dark withered branch she had gotten in Kanglan City. Do you know the origin of this branch? The aura feels familiar. It feels like the abyss. The dark withered tree sounded surprised. Could there be another tree like me? Yuan wanted to explore the location where the dark demonic tree was supposed to be found, according to the information left behind by the lords she had met in Kanglan City. Yuan took the sandworms and withdrew from the swamp. The night devil bees flying in the air landed on the branches of the dark withered tree. After a while, the dark withered tree fluctuated and turned into an ordinary tree. Yuan looked at the system panel. The dark withered tree's attributes were reduced greatly. She sighed. It had taken so long for her to get the dark divine blood. Both the nine-headed Hydra and the dark withered tree were transforming at the same time. The territory was vulnerable. Unlike the Hydra, the dark withered tree would obtain the most terrifying power in this world after a successful transformation. It could even kill gods? Suwon's heart was filled with anticipation. If the dark withered tree could successfully transform within 2 months, she could seek its help when she entered the temple to complete the S-class mission. Half a month was already gone. Suwon had another 2.5 months to complete the mission. After that, the mission would be considered a failure. Suwon was just about to return to her territory when she saw a void sandworm with golden carvings on its body. 2 months ago, it was still a baby. Now, it was 50 meters long. The difference between ordinary sandworms and void sandworms was evident from their appearance. Although ordinary sandworms were much larger, they were shorter. The sandworms with Suwon didn't dare approach the void sandworm. Suwon stepped forward and pressed her hand on its cold skin. Her psyche projected onto the mind of the void sandworm. The void sandworm was happy to sense her presence. It had taken the void sandworm a long time to learn to communicate with Suwon. She looked at the huge creature. It wanted to rub its head against her. Suwon was startled. Even the city walls would fall if it rubbed against them. Suwon asked if it could open a space gate yet. I can open the space for 6 hours, but the duration decreases with an increase in distance. It had only been able to open the space gate for 4 hours before. In just half a month, it had improved greatly. The void sandworm's ability was an asset to the territory. It was remarkable. Suwon's dream of carrying out cross-plane trade and transactions might become a reality soon. She encouraged the void sandworm and reminded it to only devour void energy. The swamp was temporarily guarded by a few void sandworms. It was impossible for enemies to sneak into the swamp without being discovered by these huge creatures. The dark withered tree did not necessarily need to be guarded, but Suwon still worried about it. She returned to the dark castle and sat down at the table. She asked for a cup of hot tea. Eve, Eliza, and Farilla found her there. Mother, you're back. Lord Suwon, I hope to return to the encampment and try to gain some experience. I want to make it to level 60 at the least, said Eliza. Eliza was determined. The armor and the weapon that Suwon gave to her proved very useful. She wanted to improve more. Suwon nodded. All right. Be careful. What about you? She asked Farilla. I also want to go out with Sister Eliza and train to be stronger, said Farilla as she hugged Suwon. Please, can I go? You are not allowed to leave the territory. It was dangerous outside, and she wanted Farilla to stay in the territory, where it was safe. Mother, I beg you. When Farilla got no response from Suwon, she turned to Su Yuan. Father, please. However, both Su Yuan and Suwon agreed. Farilla wasn't allowed outside the territory. Farilla grumbled angrily at her parents and ran out of the room. Chapter 393, The Rise of the Tide. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Farilla's hope of going out to train with Eliza was shattered. Eliza found the situation funny. If Farilla's memory was restored, and she returned to being the demigod-level hero like before, Eliza wondered how she would see this moment. If possible, I will try my best to persuade the clansmen to join the territory. Eliza knew what Suwon preferred. If the monsters could join the territory, it would be beneficial to them as well as to Suwon. Suwon nodded. Just try your best. The territory was currently very strong. It was no longer the weak territory from before. After visiting Kanglin City, Suwon gained much insight into how to run a city or a territory. Yes, my lord. Nov, L, B /JNN. Suwon looked at the dark enchanter and nodded. The two people left. The dark withered tree and the Hydra were transforming. Eliza and Eve wanted to go out and level up. The top-notch heroes of the territories were gone just like that. When they returned, the territory would have leveled up to greater heights. However, before that, Suwon needed to visit the underground world. Suwon wanted to see the progress of alchemy technology in Furnace City. She also wanted to meet the dwarves, who claimed that they were from a divine bloodline. Suwon had summoned even more troops. After coming back from Kanglin City and upgrading the territory, she summoned 2 more batches. Territory Skeleton Guardians, 800. Rotten Cavalry, 500 I. Giant Lizard Warriors, 300. Venomous Snakes, 200. Death Knights, 350. Night Elf Flame Archers, 900. Mages, 450. Night Devil Bees, 2,700. Suwon had so many Night Devil Bees that if all of them rose to the sky, they could cover the whole territory. The territory had many troops and was well protected. However, the price for that was a depletion of resources. Suwon sighed. She felt stressed because of such lavish expenditure. She wanted to accumulate resources and upgrade all troops. However, it was getting more and more difficult to accomplish that. Suwon felt like she was poor again. Resources could be earned by exploring high-risk areas. However, she had the dwarves to deal with first. The swamp needed to be left alone, and the void sandworm could only open the space gate for a few hours. Suwon woke Su Yuan up. They needed to take the two-way portal to the underground world. When they passed by the dark withered tree, they couldn't feel its aura at all. It felt like the tree was dead. The night devil bees rested on the branches of the tree. Everything felt strange. Su Yuan ignored them. Suwon and Su Yuan passed through the space gate and arrived in the underground world. There was the smell of much in the underground passageways. Su Yuan frowned. No matter how many benefits the underground world provided them, he could never get used to living in a world without the sun. Yuan confirmed the location from the system map and they flew there. Ever since the Grey Dwarves were exterminated, Dark Region City had become the center of the underground world. The barbarian race had finally become the ruler of the underground world. Even before Yuan opened trade with the underground world, the Dark Region City had been in control of everything underground. The streets of the Dark Region City were bustling with people traveling back and forth. All kinds of races lived in this place. Most people were there to either buy or sell weapons. The news of Dark Region City using food to purchase high-level equipment had spread throughout the underground world. Food was more valuable than anything else in the underground world. As two dark figures flew down from the sky, the people in the streets stopped to look up. The place became noisy. Everyone wanted to see what a lord from the surface would look like. Unfortunately, the figures descending from the sky were too fast. They were a blur. Yuan and Su Yuan ignored the whispers and stolen glances. They directly flew to the mansion. The Lord of the Dark Region City walked out of the mansion to welcome Yuan and Su Yuan. Lord Yuan and Your Majesty, Su Yuan, welcome. Felix walked over to them. He bowed respectfully. Su Yuan admired the underground people. They never accepted defeat. No need to be so formal, Felix, said Yuan. We're friends, after all. Felix was conflicted. The officials behind him sighed in relief. They told Yuan about the rumors that had spread in the underground world. Some rabbits had been captured from the forests, and whoever had done it had killed the hunting dogs. Yuan looked puzzled. She had promised that she would help the underground world as long as Felix also agreed to lend help to her territory when in need. My lord, please come in. We can talk more comfortably. Felix led them into the mansion and offered them a seat at the table. The underground world had changed drastically in the past few months, thanks to Su Yuan and Yuan. The Lord's reputation in the underground world was unparalleled. Chapter 394, The Statue. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Felix, what's the progress of our plan? Asked Yuan. Everything is going smoothly for now. The unification of the underground world isn't a far-fetched dream anymore, said Felix. The small areas around Dark Region City had all been brought under their jurisdiction. Those who refused to submit had been eliminated. The plan to exchange food for weapons was also implemented steadily. At present, more than 20,000 weapons had been exchanged for food, and more new weapons were being forged for future transactions. This way, Yuan could be in the underground world without having to invest much effort in it. You did very well, Felix, said Yuan. I have some new ideas. Please, do tell. Felix looked serious. In order to maintain the leading position in the underground world's weapon forging system, Dark Region City needs to make their forging technology accessible to all, said Yuan. Are you sure? Asked Felix in disbelief. Yes. In the future, Dark Region City can establish a blacksmiths association. It will be an organization where blacksmiths from different places can share ideas and techniques, said Yuan. At the same time, the professional blacksmiths could even choose to teach their craft in the organization. They could be generously rewarded. It will definitely encourage them to impart their knowledge to as many people as possible. This plan is still new, so I want your insight on it. Yuan and Su Yuan had come up with the plan, but they depended on Dark Region City to implement it. The weapons business mainly targeted the lords. If they wanted to continue doing business, they had to be one step ahead of the lords and give them an offer that they couldn't refuse. The lords coveted high-level weapons as they leveled up. They would search for weapons in the underground world. In such a situation, the exchange of knowledge would help to create better and more innovative weapons that might attract the lords to invest more in the underground world. However, for the plan to be effective, there needed to be incentives. Without incentives, no person would be willing to reveal the secrets of their craft. Felix was in a daze. His desire to control the underground world as he saw fit was being challenged. He felt that knowledge was very precious. How could it be shared just like that? Yuan's words made sense. He was positive that others might accept this idea too. No one would refuse to exchange and share new skills and ideas. The other officials of Dark Region City were speechless. Lord Yuan, you're amazing. The exchange of ideas would remove hurdles and barriers that they currently faced. The exchange of knowledge would also give Dark Region City an opportunity to develop fast. As long as the underground world continued forging new and high-level weapons, they didn't have to worry about a lack of food and resources. The idea should be implemented gradually. Don't be too rigid in the beginning. The idea needs to be implemented slowly so that people can ease into it. Otherwise, there will be problems, said Su Yuan. As you wish, said Felix, and bowed. There's still something important that you have to do. I want you to make a record listing all heroes in the underground world. Yes, sir, said Felix. Felix knew about Su Yuan's reputation. No one dared to go against him, so implementing the idea wouldn't be that difficult. Lord Yuan, can I come along with you to the surface? Asked Felix suddenly. Of course. When the underground world is completely unified, you can visit the territory anytime. In the future, the territory would still need Dark Region City to send troops if there was a war. Felix was overjoyed. The longing to see the above world was engraved deep in their souls. Everybody in the underground world wished to see the surface. Yuan didn't say anything further. After discussing the weapons exchange for the end of the month, Yuan left. She made her way to Furnace City. Get someone to refine the ideas and formulate a plan to implement it within 3 days, said Felix. This is a mission directly from the Lord. Anyone who tries to sabotage it will be punished. Yes, sir, said the officials who were present in the room. Felix didn't say anything else. He looked outside the window. He was really looking forward to conquering the underground world. At Furnace City, the soldiers guarding the gates saw 2 figures approaching them. Some of the dwarves were about to blow the horn to alert everyone, but another dwarf stopped them. Idiot, that's Lord Yuan and her hero Yuan. The dwarves looked at the 2 people in admiration. Yuan didn't care. He ignored them all. He got the same treatment whenever he visited the underground world. He was used to it. He crossed the city wall and prepared to land on the spacious central square. However, just as he was about to descend, Yuan's face darkened. There was a 50-meter-tall statue in his line of sight. The statue seemed to have been created by a master sculptor. What surprised them was the fact that the statue looked exactly like Yuan. n/o/vel/b/n.c//om. Yuan tried not to laugh. Yuan landed on the ground without a word. 2 dwarves surrounded them. Chapter 395, The Real Ruler of the Underground, Yuan. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Sensing the familiar aura, the dwarves came out. Great ruler, humble servant greets you and welcomes your return. Yuan's reputation surpassed Yuan's in this area. Even if she was a lord, she wasn't their ruler. Besides, the dwarves had already erected Yuan's statue in the center. Call Owen and Rooney. Tell them they can meet me here, said Yuan. Yes, Lord Yuan. The 2 dwarves hurried in to do as told. 10 minutes later, Owen arrived in his wheelchair, which was being pushed by 2 mechanical puppets. The alchemist was euphoric to see Yuan. Who asked you to create something like this in the middle of the square? Asked Yuan. All the dwarves were in agreement. They believe that you are no less than a god, said Owen with a grin. If you don't believe me, you can ask anyone here. Yuan looked at the other 2 dwarves nearby. They nodded excitedly. Yuan was speechless. This was ridiculous. Where's Rooney? Asked Yuan. Rooney was one of the masters of alchemy. He was also a grey dwarf. Rooney is inside the secret room studying the Terminator. He said that he wanted to find out a way to make the Terminator come to life. Should I call him? Only then did Yuan remember that when he annihilated the dwarves, their chief had piloted the Terminator. The Terminator was a mechanical puppet with blood-red muscles. After the dwarves were defeated, Rooney said that he could find a way to make the Terminator function once again. Forget it, no need. Just, take this statue down, all right. I suggest we keep it, Lord Yuan, said Owen. The dwarves love you and worship you. Your statue has helped maintain tight security around here. Yuan was baffled. Is this a joke? How can a statue improve an area's security? Just keep it as it is, said Yuan. Yuan sighed. Keep it if it's useful, then. Where are the dwarves who claim to share a bloodline with the gods? Yuan and Yuan walked toward the mansion. The grey dwarves came to join us of their own accord. They claim that they have the blood of the grey dwarf god flowing in their veins. Owen hadn't believed them at first, but now, he wasn't so sure. The dwarves seemed to know a lot about alchemy even though they had never learned it. Owen suspected that they might not only have the bloodline of the gods but also have high-level inheritances in their bodies. The dwarf god? Didn't the god fall? Asked Yuan. The stupid dwarves don't think so. They firmly believe that the god has gone into some kind of slumber and can be resurrected. Their legend says that. Yuan froze. What legend? Asked Yuan. It's a legend that has been circulating among the dwarves. I only learned about it by accident. Owen didn't understand why Yuan looked so shocked. Does the legend have something to do with the Crimson Moon? I'm not sure about that. Yuan's aura made it difficult for Owen to breathe. Beads of sweat marked Owen's forehead. He did not even bother to wipe his sweat. He quickly turned around and led the surrounding soldiers to the encampment. Yuan and Yuan headed toward the mansion. He sat on the golden throne. After a while, they heard a commotion outside. Around 40 dwarves entered the hall. The dwarves were short and gnarly. They looked a bit frightening. Their clothes were torn in places. The dwarves looked haggard. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Jax was right at the front of the group. He saw Yuan seated on the throne. He was excited and glad, but he calmed himself. He stepped forward. Great Lord Yuan, I, the descent of the dwarf god, greet you most humbly. Jax knelt before Yuan in respect. Rise, said Yuan. Jax stood up shakily. He didn't dare look Yuan in the eyes. I heard that you are from the bloodline of a god. If that's the case, why do you need my help? Asked Yuan. The old dwarf gritted his teeth and raised his head. Only then did he clearly see the figure on the golden throne. The man wore a black and red crown on his head. He had a handsome face. A black cloak covered part of his throne, making him appear even more mysterious. His sharp eyes seemed to look through them. Great being, although the god's blood flows in our bodies, the glory of the dwarves has disappeared with the passage of time. We have lost the ability to activate the dormant bloodline in our bodies. We need numerous resources to activate it once again. No one is as merciful as you, Lord Yuan. We, the Grey Dwarves, are willing to pledge our loyalty and sacrifice our lives for you. Chapter 396, The Statue of a God. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Jax felt uneasy. How will you prove your identity? Great ruler, this is the last treasure left by our god. It was given to us. The old dwarf took a deep breath and took out the crimson dwarf statue with trembling hands. Yuan was flustered. Her breath came in quick gasps. She felt the aura of the statue. The aura of a god? Just as Yuan was about to check its attribute panel, the dwarf said something that raised the hairs on her arms. Before our god went into slumber, he predicted something. He said the crimson moon would rise again, and this treasure could summon him. Yuan was shocked. Even Yuan was surprised. He hadn't expected to hear about the crimson moon in the underground world. The dwarf god would return with the rise of the crimson moon. That sounded very contradictory. Wasn't crimson moon supposed to get rid of gods? The prophecy seemed to be more complicated than Yuan had expected. Yuan looked at the statue in the old dwarf's hands. She calmed herself and checked its attribute panel. Statue of the dwarf god. Level, special. Characteristic, seals a part of the soul of the dwarf god and activates the power of the descendants. Note, a treasure forged by the dwarf god himself, scaling part of his soul in the core. Yuan held her breath. The soul of the dwarf god was sealed in the statue? Why were gods found in abundance these days? This statue held the real soul of a god, not like the clone of the god of light that Yuan had imprisoned. The statue itself was the key to summoning the dwarf god. Jax looked at Yuan and Yuan anxiously. Do you have any questions? Asked Jax after a long pause. What do you know about the crimson moon? Asked Yuan. Nov. L. B //JNN. The prophecy was too vague. We have searched far and wide for countless years but didn't find any information relating to the crimson moon, said Jax solemnly. Our ancestors even went as far as to think that the prophecy was just something that was made up by a sage to keep the dwarves united. There is a possibility that our god might not really wake up, he might be long gone. Jax was in despair. The Grey Dwarves had been the greatest and strongest race in the underground world once. Now, their numbers had dwindled, and they weren't as powerful as before. The Grey Dwarves had lost faith and had left. A handful of dwarves in front of Yuan were the only ones left. Prophecies cannot be fabricated, at least not the ones from gods, said Yuan firmly. Great Lord, are you speaking the truth? Jax's eyes widened in disbelief. His breath quickened. He stared at Yuan with an unwavering gaze. You aren't worth a lie. It's confirmed that the crimson moon will rise soon. So, your prophecy wasn't something fake, said Yuan. The Grey Dwarves wouldn't have believed the words if it had come from any other person. However, this person was the true ruler of the underground world. He wouldn't lie to them. Our legend was true all along. Praise be to the great ruler, Yuan. By the dwarf god, I swear that this is the best news I've ever heard in my life. The dwarves cried in relief. Tears rolled down their ugly faces. They had lost hope and still stayed put. Yuan had single-handedly restored their faith. Great ruler, the fate of the Grey Dwarves is in your hands from now on, said Jax. He walked up the golden stairs that led to the throne and placed the crimson statue in Yuan's hands. We will fight to the death for your glory, said Jax. The other dwarves were skeptical. They had decided to cooperate till their god was revived. But now, they no longer had their fate in their hands. Yuan looked at the old dwarf. He liked clever creatures. Yuan accepted the statue. It was heavier than it looked. The divine aura disappeared the moment he touched the statue. There were no more magical fluctuations. The statue looked like any other ordinary statue. The old dwarf was shocked. What was going on? Seeing that Yuan hadn't reacted, Jax lowered his head and didn't say anything. Yuan understood that the aura of the statue had disappeared because it was afraid of his power. He motioned for Yuan to present the previous statue. He then put both statues side by side. The statue of the dwarf god had no aura, but the statue of the ancient god emitted a dark light. The power of the gods was hard to fathom. In order to prevent any accidents, Yuan kept the energy of the ancient god statue under control. The statue of the ancient god was a formidable killing weapon against the masters of this world's laws. Now, it seemed that the soul of the dwarf god sealed in the depths of the statue still had some form of perception. Chapter 397, The Deal is Worth It. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Jax, how do I use this statue? Yuan asked. To summon the dwarf god or to activate our bloodline. Maybe both. You only need to inject the statue with energy to summon the dwarf god. If he is alive, he'll appear here, said Jax. However, it isn't very easy to activate our bloodline. The statue is the key. To maintain and activate our bloodline, it'll require millions of units of resources every year. The Grey Dwarves couldn't afford it. That was one of the reasons why their divine bloodline had been useless for hundreds of years. Who would be willing to give up that many resources for a bunch of dwarves? 1 million units of resources every year. That was not a small number. No ordinary lord could afford to splurge that many resources on a stupid statue. Yuan opened the attribute panel of the old dwarf before him. He wanted to see if their bloodline was worth spending that many resources on. Jax N/O/Vel/B//JN.C//OM. Hero Unit. Level, 49. Potential, A. Skill, Divine Descendants, Legendary, potential increased by 1 level, upper limit is beyond A class, can activate the divine blood in one's body and achieve the Divine Descendant body. Abilities. Divine Descendant body, body size increased to 4 meters, all attributes increased by 800%, skill attributes increased by 200%, level temporarily increased by 2, immune to death till the energy in the body is exhausted. Duration, 20 minutes. Cooldown time, 24 hours. Sealed. Inherited knowledge, beyond A class. Through active bloodline, dwarves can inherit the knowledge of their ancestors, such as combat techniques, alchemy, magical knowledge, etc. Sealed. Strong physique, B class. Undercover, Grade B. Dwarf archery, Grade C. Dwarf combat, Grade C. Forging, Grade C. Tailoring technique, Grade D. Herbal identification, Grade D. Hero talent, intelligence increases by 20%. Race talent, super comprehension. For advanced knowledge such as alchemy and magic, learning speed increases by 40%. Binding, if the number of dwarves exceeds 20, their intelligence increases by 10%, above 40, intelligence increases by 15%, over 60, intelligence increases by 20%. Note, dwarf with great potential can obtain shocking abilities if their bloodline is activated. Su Yuan was astonished. 2 abilities stood out to him. The Divine Descendant body and inherited knowledge were pretty powerful abilities. He didn't really care about the rest of the abilities. Su Yuan understood that the dwarves indeed had extraordinary potential, but they couldn't use them because they were living in poverty. Su Yuan felt sorry for them. If he could activate their bloodline, he would be able to break the seals on the 2 most powerful abilities that the dwarves had. He looked at the other dwarves present in the hall. He discovered that the Divine Descendant body ability on the other dwarves was only beyond Grade A, and the upper limit of the potential increase had also been reduced to Grade A. The temporary level increase was reduced to just 1 level, and all attributes were reduced by varying degrees. But even so, their energy was high, which made them immune to death. The other dwarves didn't have the inherited knowledge ability. Aside from Jax, nobody else was a hero unit. Yuan looked at the old dwarf. She also valued the inherited knowledge ability. Owen had mentioned that Jax could solve complex alchemical problems even though he had never dabbled in alchemy. It was obvious that the inherited knowledge ability helped Jax to find solutions to all kinds of problems. Her territory didn't lack troops who were good in combat. What she lacked were researchers. Jax could fulfill that shortage. Using 1 million rare resources in exchange for a powerful hero unit was not a bad deal. Moreover, Yuan still had a lot of dark crystals that she could use to convert ordinary dwarves into heroes. Other than the ones present here, are there more of your kind? Asked Su Yuan. When we decided to join you, some of our clansmen didn't agree. They stayed behind to guard the encampment. Owen, send someone to bring those dwarves back to Furnace City. Don't attack them or anything. I don't want any casualties, said Su Yuan. Owen nodded. He took 2 grey dwarves along with him to lead the way. Are you willing to live on the surface? Asked Su Yuan. That made the dwarves excited. The surface world was synonymous with prosperity, safety, and hope. Almost all underground creatures had an obsession with the surface world. Yes, said Jax. When we reach the surface, I'll activate your bloodline, said Su Yuan. Thank you for your kindness. Lord Yuan's words are as important as mine. You must obey her, said Su Yuan. The dwarves nodded in agreement. Su Yuan waved a hand to dismiss them. When the room emptied, Yuan and Su Yuan turned back to the statue. They sensed the vast aura within it. However, Yuan and Su Yuan were still puzzled. How could they summon the god from inside the statue? They felt that letting the statue of the ancient god devour the statue was such a waste. These kinds of treasures were very rare. Yuan and Su Yuan put away the statue and thought about the immediate problem that they faced. They needed to find the Crimson Moon. Yuan wondered if Baiyan had any luck in finding them. Only the Crimson Moon could come up with a way to deal with gods. Chapter 398, Mechanical Transportation Workshop. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. More than 60 grey dwarves were brought to the mansion by Owen. Jax was waiting for them. When the other dwarves arrived, they panicked at the sight of Su Yuan and Yuan. They lowered their heads and didn't dare look Su Yuan in the eye. Su Yuan nodded at the old dwarf, who bowed to him. Jax didn't waste any time and began explaining everything to his companions. There were a total of 3 dwarves who were of the hero unit. One was C class, and the other 2 were D class. Investing 1 million resources to activate their bloodline and new abilities sounded like a reasonable exchange. All the dwarves will be under your management, Jax, said Su Yuan. Solve your internal problems. If you need anything, tell Owen. Subduing and solving arguments among the dwarves wasn't Su Yuan's job. Yes, great ruler, Jax didn't dare refuse. The other dwarves also didn't want to offend Su Yuan. They sensed that he was powerful. What could they do? Their life was in Su Yuan's hands now. The mechanical transportation workshop that you ordered to be built has been completed, said Owen after the dwarves left the hall. Transportation was still a problem. Flying didn't suffice. So, Yuan collected blueprints and had the dwarves build the mechanical transportation workshop to come up with new means of transportation. She wanted to use the sandworms for transportation. Yuan's goal wasn't just to conquer the underground world. She wanted to create a functioning city that worked well with her territory like a well-oiled machine. Owen led the way, and Yuan and Yuan followed behind. Alchemy was a thing of wonder for the natives. Alchemical technology could change the world. The Grey Dwarves were especially gifted with alchemical knowledge. Although their race was arrogant, greedy, and cowardly, their knowledge of alchemy was unparalleled. Yuan and Yuan had many ideas on how to make use of that knowledge and implement it in their own territory. The biggest problem at the moment was that the introduction of alchemy in Furnace City had not achieved the desired effect. There were 3 huge machines in front of the mechanical transportation workshop. Each machine was almost 10 meters tall, 20 meters wide, and 30 meters long. They were divided into 3 levels. There were huge hooks at the front and the back. Yuan was just about to ask something when Owen pointed at the machines. "These are the boats we designed for the sandworms," he said. "It's designed in sections. For transporting small packages, just one boat could be used. However, if the capacity is more, each boat could be hooked to the other to make wider space. The sides could also be dismantled to just keep the base if we're transporting something that is huge and heavy. Moreover, the front part is designed with the sandworm's body in mind. The hook will adjust itself to fit their bodies." Yuan was satisfied with the information that Owen gave her. He had basically built a train. She had obtained the blueprint months before and given it to Owen. It felt good to finally see some results. The dwarves were indeed very talented. n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Although the mechanical boat has been completed, there are still many things that need to be improved. "We still need the sandworms to cooperate with us for further research," said Owen. "Of course. I'll send some sandworms here, so you can study them all you like." Survival and safety were always the most basic needs for every creature on this plane. It seemed alchemical knowledge also focused on that. The mechanical boat was similar to a train. Although it was originally intended to transport troops, it could be used to transport anything. The other lords mostly focused on strengthening their troops, while Yuan focused more on developing her territory. For this, opening trade relationships with the underground world had been most fruitful. The sandworms are still growing. Their sizes will be different in the future. "Have you taken that into consideration?" asked Yuan. Owen nodded. The mechanical boat was finalized after many discussions. "We considered every variable. Yuan and Yuan could become rulers of the underground world if they played their cards right. The dwarves' contributions to alchemy would be invaluable. They had gathered most talents from Furnace City after defeating it." Chapter 399, Mestre's Ideas. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Alchemy has the potential to create miracles. It's not just used in military affairs. Altering the natural environment and making it suitable has a lot of uses, said Yuan. Yuan nodded in agreement. Nowadays, very few people pay attention to this aspect of alchemy. When alchemy was first born, it was used to transform the environment and increase production. "Both of you are very wise," said Owen. Owen had a feeling that if he kept working in the field of alchemy, he could achieve many great things. Yuan and Yuan were also looking forward to it. Perhaps some other quick-wit lords were already trying it. However, not everyone had an underground area that they could use as a test field. They didn't even have gifted dwarves who had knowledge of all kinds of alchemical technology. Yuan was aware that if she activated the dwarf god statue, she could trigger ancient knowledge of the dwarves that could be even more helpful to build new things. Dark Region City was the source of weapons. Furnace City would soon become a place for alchemy research. They all wanted to compete for Yuan's approval. No one dared to go against him. Furnace City was on the right track. Yuan's territory was gradually leaving its mark here, and the Grey Dwarves were willing to follow Yuan. As long as Yuan was around, the dwarves would obey and follow him. After taking care of the matters in the underground world, Yuan and Yuan returned to the surface. Felix was in charge of Dark Region City and Owen was in charge of Furnace City. Both these people were highly qualified to carry out orders and watch the people under them. All the Grey Dwarves followed Yuan and Yuan. There were a total of 30 dwarves in total. Yuan wanted the dwarves to stay in Furnace City and help the others make advancements in the alchemical field. However, he first needed to activate their bloodline. n/o/vel/b/in.c//om. The production for the normal resources was high, but not so much for the rare resources. Although there were various small mines spawning around the territory, they didn't really provide many resources. Yuan listened as her subordinate reported on the mines and the remaining resources. She didn't know how she could earn 1,000,000 resources instantly. "It's all right. It's all right. I can just try and accumulate as many as I can," thought Yuan as she tried to console herself. After the bloodline was activated, they rolled keep the useful dwarves in the territory and send the rest back to Furnace City. "Has Eliza sent any news?" asked Yuan. "Not yet. Maybe she hasn't reached the Charm Devil tribe encampment yet. 11 Timo shook his head. Timo took out an opened letter from his pocket and handed it to Yuan. As the administrative officer of the territory in Yuan's absence, the letter was addressed to him. So, it was okay for him to open it. Yuan waved her hand. "Just tell me what it says. Mostly ideas on how to develop the Lavender Business Guild further. I already sent a reply to Mestre. There is one matter that needs your approval, though," said Timo. "What new ideas does Mestre have?" asked Yuan. Mestre suggests that we use the territory's feature of finding our way through the swamp to speed up the trade, said Timo. Yuan was somewhat puzzled. Not only ordinary trade. Mestre suggests shifting the territory core to the center of the swamp, allowing the good to circulate from both within and outside the territory, said Timo. Her suggestions made sense to Yuan. It was a great idea. The Overlord Plain was a maze. Many creatures, heroes, and lords got lost in it. However, Yuan's territory had a special ability with which her troops and her creatures could always find their way back home. Yuan frowned. Furnace City had developed the mechanical boats for exactly the same purpose. Did Mestre already know about it? 1. Sam left the blacksmith shop. His hair was messy, and his clothes were unkempt. People frowned whenever he passed by. He looked so haggard that, sometimes, people mistook him for a beggar. It didn't help that he had only one arm to add to the look. However, Sam didn't care. He puffed out his chest proudly and walked through the streets with glittering eyes. The residents respected him and were equally envious of him. That was because the uniform he wore was specially designed to signal to others that he was the lead blacksmith in the territory. Only the staff of the smithy were qualified to wear that uniform, and the smithy was one of the most important contributors to the territory. The blacksmith uniforms were divided into 3 types: apprentice, forger, and master blacksmith. Sam was the only one who wore the uniform designed for the master blacksmith. It displayed his title and status in the territory. Sam walked briskly down the street as he hummed a soft tune. He was hurrying home today because he knew someone was waiting for him. Today was a special day. It was Nana's birthday. Ever since he met Nana, his life had turned brighter. The days now filled him with hope and a will to live. On the surface, it seemed as though he was the one taking care of Nana, but only he knew how much he relied on her. Without her, he was nothing. A few months ago, he had found a blind girl in the swamp. He had helped her through the swamp. They trudged through the land for days before coming upon the territory. If he hadn't continued on, he would have never found this territory. This territory had given him and Nana a home, and it had also offered him a livelihood. He would never forget what this territory had given him. His soul belonged to Nana, and his life belonged to the territory. Chapter 400, The Blacksmith's Lover. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. If a need arose, he would gladly defend this place with his life. His loyalty and his devotion belonged to Lord Yuan and Yuan. Sam, you're back so early today. A melodic voice interrupted Sam's thought. He looked at the woman standing in front of him. Miss Anna, today is Nana's birthday. So, I came back a little early. That's great. I didn't know Nana's birthday was today. Anna's smile froze on her face. Well then, I'll leave you to it. I'm heading back so I don't impose. Thank you, and goodbye, Miss Anna, said Sam. Since Sam didn't ask her to stay back, Anna left grumpily. Before Sam could continue on, a middle-aged man stopped him. The man wore a black robe. He looked wealthy. Uncle Aok, good day. Sam greeted the man before him. Sam, didn't you meet Anna? Asked Aok. I just met her. She left, though. Were you looking for her? Didn't she talk to you? We talked a little, but I told her I'm in a hurry to meet Nana. It's Nana's birthday today. Ah, right. Aok looked at Sam strangely. Sam, have you thought about what I told you before? Anna was famous in the territory. She was beautiful and talented. Anybody would be lucky to have her by their side. Yes, thank you for reminding me. Uncle Aok, I did think about it, but I already have Nana. I'm not asking you to give up on Nana. She's a good child. You can be with them both. Aok didn't think there was anything wrong with a man having multiple wives. Besides, Sam was outstanding at his work. Even Lord Yuan treated him with respect because he was a very talented blacksmith. If you're worried that Nana won't agree to it, I can talk to her. I'm sure she'll understand. Uncle Aok, I think you misunderstood me, said Sam. Nana is my everything. I can't even think of anybody else. Nana was enough. Aok's face darkened. He could see unwavering determination and loyalty in Sam's eyes when it came to Nana. I understand. Nana is a good woman, and she deserved everything good in the world. To be able to capture your heart and your loyalty, it must truly be the blessing of the goddess. Aok reached out and patted Sam on the shoulder. It's the other way round. I'm the one who is blessed that she chose me. Without her, I might already be dead, said Sam n/o/vel/b/jn.c//om. Aok watched as Sam walked away with spring in his steps and disappeared around the corner. He lowered his head and pulled up his sleeve. A crystal bracelet full of impurities was tied around his wrist. He looked at it in nostalgia. In the brightly lit house, a young man in his early 20s was looking at a young woman with an unwavering gaze. The young man was tall and fair. He had golden hair. I swear to the goddess that you're the most beautiful thing to ever exist on this earth. Nana, I truly love you. I got a job at the food workshop. I'm going to earn a lot of money and then use it to get treatment for your eyes. I can stay with you every day after work. You won't be neglected like you are now. Nana slowly raised her head. Please forgive me for being straightforward, but could you not talk about Sam in that tone? The young man staggered away in embarrassment. Nana ignored him. She would prefer it if that annoying man wouldn't visit her house at all. Nana only had thoughts about Sam. He was so busy these past few days. Maybe I can make some honey bread for him. I can ask someone to drop it off at the smithy. Nana smiled radiantly. She was about to get up and go make some bread when the door opened. she heard familiar footsteps. Sam, you're back. Nana was overjoyed. The air seemed to be filled with the fragrance of spring flowers. It was mesmerizing. Sam laughed. Of course, I am. How could I be late on this day? Happy birthday, Nana. He placed the flowers in her hand. Nana lifted them to her nose to smell them. Sam, where did you find the white moon flowers? Do you like it? Asked Sam. I love them. Today is the most important day of my life, said Sam. It's your birthday and also the day we first met. Sam held her hands in his. This was the day I got my life back. It's because you appeared in my life that I found a purpose. I hope to be by your side forever if you'll allow me. Nana felt something slip onto her ring finger. Tears streamed down her face. Sam, are you sure about this? I've never been so sure of anything else in my life. Will you marry me? Yes. Nana cried in happiness and hugged him tightly. Yes, I will.